Chapter 942. Is Little Ming a Pig? Blower looked at Meg with furrowed brows. This is a very common and basic problem. If the customer is a glutton, then they'll eat even more. As such, it's very important to calculate the results as quickly as possible, Meg explained calmly. This was the beauty of arithmetic in practice. How many gold coins is 800 copper coins? 2 bowls of braised chicken and rice is 1. Blower's brows furrowed as he thought for a long while. He then turned to Meg and splayed his hands open as he said, "So be it, I give up. This is too difficult. This is not a problem that a normal elf can calculate." Right at this moment, Anna raised her little hand and said, "That's a total of 38 gold coins." "Huh?" Meg and Blower both turned to Anna in unison. "That's right, that's a total of 38 gold coins." Meg nodded with a smile as he looked at Anna. He didn't think that she would be so good at mental arithmetic, even though this wasn't a difficult problem. "No way. Anna, are you trying to embarrass me like this?" Blower's intricate eyebrows perked up slightly, and he suddenly felt a little embarrassed. A smile appeared on Anna's face as she turned to Meg with anticipation in her eyes, and said, "Uncle Meg, can I work at the restaurant as a cashier? Can big sister Shirley work as a waitress?" "Anna, you want to work as a cashier?" A hesitant look appeared on Meg's face. Anna was only 2 years older than Amy, and she was still in school. Asking her to work at the restaurant as a cashier would be akin to employing a child. Yes. I want to learn how to cook from Uncle Meg, and then help out at the restaurant. I still remember the multiplication table that Amy taught me last time, so I won't make a mistake in my calculations." Anna nodded before turning to Blower, and whispering, "Also, if big sister Shirley works at the restaurant as a waitress, then I'll be alone in the embassy." Blower placed his hand on Anna's head as he looked at Meg, and said, "I've already asked Chaos School. If Anna wants to enroll, she'll have to wait until next semester at the very least." A smile appeared on Meg's face. He squatted down and looked at Anna. "If that's the case, then we'll have to trouble our little friend Anna. However, as the restaurant's youngest employee, you'll still receive a salary and benefits." "I don't want money. I just want to learn how to cook from Uncle Meg." Anna shook her head. Blower raised an eyebrow and said, "How can you work for free, little guy? We have to take the money." "That's right. Otherwise, I would become a black-hearted boss who exploits child laborers." Meg also nodded with a smile. He stood up and extended a hand toward Blower as he said, "Congratulations, young Mistress Shirley, you've been accepted." "Congratulations, Mr. Meg, you've accepted me." Blower extended a hand to shake Meg's hand, and both of them smiled at the same time. "Take a seat first. There's still some time before the opening hours. I'll go and prepare some suitable work clothes for you too. Looks like I can put away the recruitment notice I prepared yesterday." Meg placed the recruitment notice on the counter into the cupboard with a smile. He poured 2 cups of warm water for both of them before making his way upstairs. "I like to wear my own clothes." Blower looked at Meg's departing figure. "You have to wear work clothes when you're working," Meg replied without even turning around. After going through the women's clothing library provided by the system, Meg finally chose a modified version of Han Chinese clothing for Shirley. It was a waist-length dress with a plain white top and a long red skirt with golden embroidery on the sleeves. As for Anna, Meg chose a blue cotton dress with a small jacket for her. The weather was getting a little cold, so she had to wear more clothes. Ding! 3,000 copper coins have been successfully deducted. Customizing women's clothing. 3 minutes later. Ding! The goods have been delivered. Please accept them. Meg carried 2 sets of clothes downstairs and placed them in front of Shirley with a smile as he said, "These are your work clothes. The restaurant is severely short on manpower, so you'll have to start work this morning." Meg had already decided that when Blower put on women's clothing, he would treat him as Shirley. After discarding his preconceived notions, he would become a lot more natural around her. "What a beautiful dress and jacket. Thank you, Uncle Meg." Anna hugged her clothes as she looked at Meg with a sweet expression. "What's this?" Shirley looked at the Han Chinese clothing and hesitated for a moment before reaching out to touch it. The material was smooth to the touch, so it should be made from the best silk. However, the clothes were separate from the dress, and one was red while the other was white. She found it very strange no matter how she looked at it. Oh, right, this is the Han Chinese clothing. Even though it's an improved version, it's still a little complicated to put on. As for the clothes, Meg began to explain in detail how to put on the Han Chinese clothing. Even though it had been improved, it was still a little complicated for people who were experiencing it for the first time. You can change into the clothes in the bathroom upstairs. I'm going to the market to buy some ingredients now. Make yourselves at home. If Amy wakes up and I'm not back yet, you can tell her that I'll make breakfast for you when I come back, Meg said to Shirley before pushing his bicycle out. Big sister Shirley, do you want to change? Anna asked Shirley with the clothes in her arms. Aye. Shirley looked at the clothes on the table and hesitated for a moment before pursing her lips. I'll just put it on casually. If it's too ugly, I won't wear it. 10 minutes later, Shirley, who had changed into the new clothes with some difficulty, looked at herself in the mirror with a look of disbelief. The white button-down top matched with the dark red waist-length dress. The strong contrast between the white and red made one's eyes light up. It was like a red plum blossom blooming in the snow, appearing exceptionally outstanding. It was neither charming nor charming, and it had a sense of pride. It was so compatible with her temperament that it was much better than the long dress she liked the most. The unique style and wonderful combination had achieved such an incredible effect in the end. It was really beyond her expectations. There were a few exquisite patterns on the collar and sleeves with gold thread. It was generous and exquisite, making the white clothes look even more stylish. What was even more amazing was that this set of clothes seemed to be tailor-made for her. It fit her so well that even the length of the sleeves was exactly the same. This is too good, isn't it? Looking at herself in the mirror, Shirley was silent for a long time before she couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Creak. Chapter 943. Shirley was stunned for a moment and almost jumped up. Her usually calm expression suddenly changed. She quickly waved her hands and said, "Little Amy, you can't say that. How could I have slept with him? But if you didn't sleep with him, then why are you changing in the bathroom? And it's not time for the restaurant to open yet. Father won't let customers in early, much less let others into the bathroom." Amy looked as if she had seen through everything. This. Shirley was stunned for a moment. Although the situation wasn't like that, why did it feel like there was a good reason? Amy. At this moment, Anna's voice came from the staircase. Anna, who had already changed into the blue Lolita dress, poked her head out from the staircase. Then, she ran up with a smile. When she saw Shirley in the bathroom, her eyes lit up. Her mouth opened slightly as she exclaimed, "Wow! Sister Shirley, you look so beautiful after changing into your work uniform." Work uniform? Amy looked at Anna with surprise and confusion. "Sister Anna, why are you in the restaurant too? Sister Shirley and I have already become employees of the restaurant. Our clothes are the work uniforms given to us by Uncle Meg," Anna said with a smile. Shirley regained her composure and nodded slightly. "That's right." Then, she looked at Anna gratefully. She didn't expect this little fellow to help her out. "So that's how it is." Amy looked at Shirley with a little disappointment. She thought to herself, "There's one less important piece of information that I can report to Sister Irina." However, Amy's expression quickly lit up again. She grabbed Anna's hand and said happily, "That's great. I can see Sister Anna every day from now on." Yes. Anna's face was also filled with a happy smile. "System, look at how cheap this fresh eggplant is. It's less than a copper coin per kilogram, and it's big in shape. You'd have to rely on genetic mutation to make eggplants this big on Earth, right? Such good stuff, I have to buy more." Meg thought to himself as he strolled around the market and looked at the eggplants that were as big as winter melons. "Host, you must be very curious. You've already done all the ingredients and procedures to the extreme, but you still can't make the eggplant with garlic sauce taste as good as you expected, right?" the system asked calmly. Meg stopped in his tracks and asked hesitantly, "Why? System, are you going to give me the complete recipe?" "No, The system is very pleased that the host has successfully researched the best recipe of eggplant with garlic sauce with his own efforts and research spirit. What you lack now is not skills, but the best eggplant. When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. If an eggplant is as big as a winter melon, it means that it can no longer be called an eggplant. An eggplant that cannot be placed on the grill is an eggplant that has lost its soul. The eggplants grown by this system are produced on the southern slope of Dragon Island's Feichuan Mountain. The sunlight is long and the intensity is high. The volcanic ash provides fertile soil and nutrients for the eggplants. It has the advantages of both long eggplants and round eggplants, perfectly retaining the flavor of eggplants on Earth. It's the best choice for eggplants with garlic sauce and grilled eggplants with spicy sauce. The system's voice sounded with the special passion of a salesperson. Meg frowned slightly, but still said calmly, "How much are your eggplants?" Excellent eggplants are sold by the roots. The eggplants produced by the system are full of meat and nutritious. How much is one eggplant? How heavy is one eggplant? Meg interrupted calmly, 35 copper coins for one eggplant. One eggplant weighs about 400 grams. The price is clearly marked. No bargaining. The system said seriously. It's too expensive. I've researched this dish myself. You can't control what ingredients I use. I might as well buy the eggplants that cost 1 copper coin per kilo. There's not much difference in taste. Meg curled his lips and walked to the boss without any reluctance. Hey, host, don't worry. We can still negotiate the price. You've indeed researched this dish yourself. But as a person who wants to become the god of cookery, how can you allow your food to have flaws when you can obviously do it to the best of your ability? The system suddenly became anxious, 30 copper coins for one eggplant. Not one more copper coin. At the same time, you have to give me the right to purchase other ingredients for the eggplant with garlic sauce. Meg's lips curled up slightly. Deal. The system gritted its teeth and said, "Very good." Meg bypassed the vegetable stall owner who was full of smiles and walked straight to the entrance of the market. It was naturally the best to be able to get the ingredients provided by the system. The slight flaw in the taste really made Meg feel as if there was a fishbone stuck in his throat. Perfectionists were so pretentious. When he rode the bicycle back to the restaurant, Meg saw a few staff members of the Food Association adjusting the magic screen. It seemed that the new gourmet rankings was indeed going to be online. On the way back, Meg also met Phyllis. The child seat that he removed yesterday had not been installed yet, so Meg gave her a ride. "Thank you, boss." It was the first time Phyllis was so close to a man. When she got off the bicycle, her face was flushed and she even stuttered a little. "You're welcome." Meg opened the door with a smile. He picked up the bicycle and was about to go in. "Miss Sally, has she left?" Phyllis suddenly asked in a small voice. Meg stopped and turned to look at Phyllis. He nodded and said, "Yes, she went back last night." "Okay." Phyllis bit her lip. Her eyes were slightly red. "Don't worry. Everything will be fine." Meg patted her shoulder gently and carried the bicycle into the restaurant. "Princess, are you okay?" Phyllis stood at the entrance of the restaurant for a while. After she calmed down, she opened the door and went in. Phyllis. Shirley, who was holding a glass of water and drinking elegantly, almost spat out the water when she saw Phyllis come in. She choked and coughed until her face turned red. Phyllis, who had just come in, was also stunned when she saw such a beautiful elf and a little elf. The restaurant was not open yet. How did they come in? This is Big Sister Phyllis, also known as Big Sister Bean Sprout. She's in charge of cutting vegetables and slicing the duck. Her knife skills are very good. She's only slightly inferior to Father. Amy introduced Anna and Shirley to Phyllis. She then looked at Phyllis and said, "Big Sister Bean Sprout, this is Big Sister Anna and Big Sister Shirley. From today onward, they will also be restaurant staff." "Hello." Phyllis hurriedly nodded slightly. "Hello, Big Sister Phyllis," Anna greeted obediently. "Hello." Shirley nodded slightly and tried to appear as calm as possible. Although she knew what had happened in the wind forest, meeting Phyllis directly still surprised and frightened her. Chapter 944. Boss, Aisha is missing. She didn't return to the dormitory last night. When I didn't see her wake up this morning, I knocked on her door, but no one answered. I opened the door and went in, but she wasn't in the room. I searched the entire dormitory but couldn't find her. Now, what should we do now? Everyone was getting to know each other when Yarbemia opened the door in a panic and said anxiously. Barbara also pushed the door open and came in. Her hair was a little messy, as if she had just been dragged out of bed. Her face was also full of worry. Meg walked out of the kitchen and said to Yarbemia and Barbara, MIA, Aisha didn't go missing. She went home. She only said goodbye to me last night and told me to tell you that if there's a chance in the future, she will come back to visit us again. She went home? That's good. Yarbemia heaved a sigh of relief, but a hint of dejection quickly appeared on her face. Her eyes were slightly red as she said softly, but I haven't said goodbye to her yet. So what if she went home? It's pretty good. Barbara went forward and patted Mia's shoulder with a relaxed expression. However, there was still a hint of loneliness in her eyes. Meg looked at Mia with a smile and said gently, Aisha said that she didn't like to say goodbye, so she left quietly. I think she wants everyone to remember her smile. Mia looked up at Meg and nodded lightly. Meg continued with a smile, then let me introduce everyone to our new friends who just joined the restaurant today. Shirley and Anna, who everyone is already very familiar with. From today onwards, they are also members of Amy's. I hope that everyone can get along well at work and have a relaxed and happy life. I'm the cashier, Anna. Nice to meet you. Anna stepped forward and smiled sweetly. I'm Shirley. Shirley stepped forward and nodded slightly. Yarbemia looked at Shirley, and her eyes lit up. She exclaimed in amazement, Wow! What a beautiful young lady. Is this the new outfit that boss prepared for Shirley? So beautiful, so compatible. Shirley was a regular customer of the restaurant. Apparently, she was young Master Blauer's sibling, but the two of them always came to the restaurant together. However, beautiful people were always easy to remember, and Yarbemia naturally still remembered her. Barbara also looked at Shirley in surprise. When she was in the Moon Nation, she felt that she was already pretty enough. After all, she was the eldest princess of the Moon Nation. Everyone who saw her would praise her. But after coming to this world, she found that there were many girls who were prettier than her in Amy's alone, not to mention the beauties she had seen among the customers during this period. Shirley's beauty was otherworldly, especially when she was wearing this special outfit. The contrast between white and crimson made one's eyes light up. In the Moon Nation, she would be regarded as a great beauty. But now, she was working as a waitress at Mammoth. It was really strange. Being a waiter here doesn't seem too bad, Shirley thought to herself with a smile on her face as she listened to everyone's praises. Little beauty Anna, are you still going to learn how to cook if you become a little cashier? Yarbemia asked Anna with a smile. Anna had stayed in the restaurant for a while, and learned how to cook from Meg every day, so she was very familiar with everyone. Chem. I want to learn how to cook from Uncle Meg and become a chef as good as him. But I will also do my job well. Anna nodded with determination in her eyes. Everyone smiled knowingly when they heard that. This little fellow was very ambitious at such a young age. Phyllis couldn't help but take a few more glances at Anna. She didn't expect this little elf to also want to become a chef. Then, she would have a little companion to learn how to cook with. The melancholy of Sally's departure was quickly washed away by the new members and the process of familiarizing with each other. Shirley was a little narcissistic and a little misophobia, but there was nothing wrong with her personality. She quickly became familiar with everyone, but she was a little quiet. Today's new item, eggplant with garlic sauce. Available starting at noon. Meg wrote a line on the notice board, and then asked Yarbemia to hang it outside the door. Eggplant with garlic sauce? Boss, is the new dish related to fish? Yarbemia asked curiously. I like fish. Can we have fish this morning? Amy's eyes lit up, and she came up expectantly. You should eat something lighter in the morning, so you can only have it at noon. Meg shook his head with a smile. Although he also wanted to find someone to try the new dish first, Eggplant with garlic sauce was still a little oily and heavy due to the way it was cooked. Obviously, it wasn't suitable to eat in the morning. Okay. Amy was a little disappointed, but she still nodded obediently. Okay, let's eat. Today is Shirley and Anna's first day at work. If there's anything they're not familiar with, please help them out. The busy opening hours are about to begin. Meg smiled and tapped Amy's nose as he said this to everyone. Breakfast was already laid out on the table. Yangju fried rice, rujiamo, and tofu pudding. It was simple and delicious, enough to provide energy for the whole morning. There's no need to worry about such a simple job. Shirley picked up the spoon with a relaxed expression and put a spoonful of fried rice into her mouth. The smile on her face grew brighter. She could eat this delicious fried rice and tofu pudding without having to wait in line. This job didn't seem to be as bad as she had imagined. The job at the restaurant seems simple, but it's much more complicated than you think. Meg didn't forget to give her a warning. Although she was a 7th-tier magic caster, some things couldn't be solved with magic. After breakfast, everyone cleared the table and prepared to officially open for business. Meg looked at Shirley and Anna with a smile, and said, Amy's principle is to provide comfortable service to our customers. We advocate mutual respect and treat every customer equally. No matter what race they are, whether they're rich or poor, as long as they're our customers, we'll treat them equally. Of course, Amy's also has its own bottom line. The service provided by the waiters doesn't include being bullied. As for those unreasonable customers, we can clear them out. You can refer to the precautions at the back of the menu for specific details. I like the last one, Shirley said as she picked up a menu and looked at it. What if someone refuses to pay? Anna asked meekly. Chapter 945. The customers soon found out about the change of service staff at Immerse. The regulars had a good impression of Sally, who was serious in speech and manner, but swift and elegant in her actions. They were a little reluctant to see her leave. However, the new service staff, Shirley, also caused quite a commotion. After all, there was no other elf as beautiful as her in Chaos City. She had become a service staff member at Immerse, and had taken over Sally's job. That was a little consolation. Mr. Mac, I'm really in awe of you. Can you tell me secretly where you hired your employees? I want to hire a secretary. Harrison went up to Meg and gave him a thumbs up. When it comes to hiring employees, I always leave it to fate. Meg smiled and turned to walk towards the kitchen. Was he going to say that Yarbemia was picked up from the streets, Barbara fell from the sky, Firis was brought back from the wind forest, and Shirley was recommended by Sally? That was too flirtatious. Even he was a little embarrassed to say it. Mr. Mac is good at everything, but he's too pretentious when he talks. Harrison sighed. He looked at the chattering in the restaurant, and was still very envious. Help me up. I want to see if Miss Shirley is still as heartless as before. She won't even see me. My lovesickness is killing me, a pale-faced Constantine said weakly in a luxurious horse-drawn carriage. Master, why do you have to do this? A middle-aged man who looked like a butler helped him up, and helplessly said, that Miss Shirley doesn't even know that you've been waiting for her at Immerse every day. You can't blame her for being heartless. This is just one-sided love. She doesn't have any feelings for you. Constantine's expression froze. He turned to look at that butler, and said in a trembling voice, You. Bullshit. Although I've only met Miss Shirley twice, I've already decided that she's the only woman in my life. No matter what, I must find her and confess my love to her. Otherwise, I'd rather die. What if she refuses? The butler asked. Constantine's face turned red, and he said angrily, Nonsense. She. How could she possibly refuse? I love her wholeheartedly. I'm willing to give up my life for her. How could she reject me? This is absolutely impossible. She will definitely fall in love with me. Love isn't like that. The butler sighed. With an indifferent expression, he helped Constantine off the carriage. If I can't see Miss Shirley again, what's the point of living? I might as well die and turn into a butterfly to follow her. Then, I'll be able to see her every day. Constantine said with a sorrowful expression. He looked up and saw a woman in a white blouse and a red dress cleaning the dishes through the floor-to-ceiling window. Miss Shirley. Constantine's eyes lit up immediately, but he blinked again. He pulled the butler with joy and a little panic, and said, "Did you see Miss Shirley? Am I hallucinating? Why is Miss Shirley working as a waitress at Mammoth's?" The butler looked into the dining room and nodded. "If that beautiful elf lady is Miss Shirley, then you shouldn't be mistaken, master." "That's great. Let's go in quickly." Constantine was elated. He suddenly felt strength in his legs, and he was about to walk toward the entrance of the restaurant. "Master, calm down. This is Mammoth's. You have to queue to enter." The butler quickly reached out to stop Constantine, and gestured with his mouth to indicate the long line at the side. Constantine glanced at the unfriendly customers in the line, and calmed down immediately. He almost forgot that this was Mammoth's. If he cut the line, he might be blacklisted, and he wouldn't be able to enter the restaurant in the future. Although he didn't know why Shirley became a waitress at Mammoth's, Constantine was very excited now. If this was true, then he would be able to see Miss Shirley every day in the future. That was too blissful. He walked all the way to the back of the line. Constantine, who was so weak that he couldn't stand up earlier, was now full of energy. He didn't even need the butler to support him anymore. His bloodshot eyes stared at Shirley, and his heart was as sweet as candy. Miss Shirley must still remember me, right? No, she must have missed me so much, just like me. Otherwise, with her beauty and status, why would she become a waitress? It must have been hard on her just to see me. That must be it. I didn't expect Miss Shirley to be such a thoughtful woman. I'm really touched. Today, I must confess my feelings to her and tell her that I love her too. Don't worry, Miss Shirley. I know all about your feelings for me, Constantine said. His face turned redder and redder, and even his breathing became heavier. The line moved forward slowly, and it was finally Constantine's turn. He tidied his clothes, took a deep breath, and tried to calm himself down. Then, he pulled open the restaurant door and hit his forehead with a thud. Ouch! Constantine held his swollen forehead, and he felt like there were stars in front of his eyes. The customers in the line outside covered their mouths and snickered. The customers in the restaurant stuck their heads out curiously, wanting to see which idiot hit the door like that. "Are you here to smash the restaurant?" Shirley also looked at Constantine, who was standing at the door, with some scrutiny. Other than agreeing to take over Sally's job, she also promised to protect the restaurant. She didn't expect to be needed so soon. "Master, Miss Shirley is looking at you," the butler reminded him softly. Constantine straightened his body, and the pain disappeared instantly. The stars in front of his eyes also disappeared slowly. He blinked, and his eyes met the face that he had been thinking about day and night. "Miss Shirley, I understand your feelings. I didn't expect you to miss me as much. I can feel your pain. Let me protect you," Constantine said as he took 2 steps forward and looked at Shirley with an infatuated expression. The restaurant was completely silent. Everyone was looking at the 2 people standing at the entrance of the restaurant, guessing what kind of relationship and grudges there were between the two. Many people's gossipy souls had already begun to burn. Chapter 946. Critical Hit. Constantine took 2 steps back and looked at Shirley in disbelief. His flushed face turned pale in an instant. If not for the butler supporting him in time, he might not even be able to stand properly. "Miss Shirley doesn't remember me? How is that possible? I think of her every day. Doesn't she feel it at all? Did I feed all my love for her to the dogs?" Constantine looked at Shirley with a pained expression. He looked like an aggrieved little wife who had been bullied. Shirley frowned. She really couldn't remember who this man who looked like he had a kidney deficiency was. Phut. So it's just one-sided love and delusions. A young lady at the side burst out laughing. She thought it was a tragic drama, but it turned into a comedy. The customers who were watching the show also smiled knowingly. They didn't expect this beautiful elf lady to bring so much joy to everyone when she just became a waitress. This was probably the worst confession of the year, right? He didn't even reject it. He just admitted his mistake. "Brother, Aren't you afraid that she'll take out something bigger than you? In the kitchen, Meg glanced at Constantine and sighed in his heart. He pitied him. Shirley is really popular. Someone confessed on the first day of work, Yarbemia said softly with a smile. That uncle is too ugly, Barbara said with disdain as she glanced at Constantine. Shirley continued to clear the table. The plates landed on the tray lightly. She waved her hand gently on the table, and a green light swept across. A stream of water flowed over the table and chairs, and the table and chairs were as clean as new. Master, wake up. The most important thing now is to maintain your poise, the butler said calmly as he held Constantine's hand. Constantine's eyes gradually regained some life. He looked at Shirley, who was about to leave with the tray, and quickly forced a smile. Miss Shirley, I was just joking. We haven't seen each other for a long time. I didn't expect you to have forgotten me. Then, let me introduce myself again. I'm not interested. Shirley didn't even look at him. She turned around and walked towards the kitchen. Constantine's mouth was agape. He looked at Shirley's back view without any reluctance. His heart felt stifled. What a pitiful man. Actually, his looks are not bad. Isn't he our Chaos City's famous eligible bachelor, Constantine? He has more than 10 gem stores under him and is rich in wealth. He is a veteran in the field of love and has never failed. I didn't expect to be rejected here. You have to pay for what you've done. If the girls who were fooled by him back then knew that he would have a day like this, they would definitely laugh like crazy. The guests looked at Constantine and whispered among themselves. Some of the guests who knew Constantine began to reveal some of his past to satisfy their curiosity for gossip. Master, should we leave or stay? The housekeeper asked softly. He looked at Constantine worriedly. Although he didn't have high hopes for Constantine, he had watched him grow up. He couldn't bear to see him getting thinner day by day. Why are you leaving? I'll be wherever Miss Shirley is. Constantine plopped his butt on a chair at the side and laid his head on the table. He looked in the direction of the kitchen in a daze and said weakly, Also, I'm starving to death. Hurry up and order me a Yeongju fried rice and a braised chicken and rice. Master, are you finally going to eat? Constantine was elated. He quickly gestured for the waiter to come over and take his order. It doesn't matter if it's a temporary failure. As long as I continue to work hard, I believe Miss Shirley will be touched by my sincerity one day. I've already decided that she's the one for me. If I can't marry her, I'd rather be alone for the rest of my life, Constantine said with determination. Destined to be alone for the rest of your life. Then, Meg saw 3 big colored words appear above Constantine's head. System, you're a little naughty. Meg raised his eyebrows, and couldn't help but chuckle. The Yeongju fried rice and braised chicken and rice were quickly served. Constantine, who hadn't had an appetite for food for a few days, had a great appetite. It didn't take long for him to finish the fried rice and braised chicken and rice. He was no longer listless, and his face was glowing again. Mr. Mac's food is not only delicious, but also invigorating. It's amazing, Constantine exclaimed in admiration. Constantine praised. He looked at Mag in the kitchen, and thought to himself, You even helped me find young Mistress Shirley. When I get young Mistress Shirley, I will definitely give you a big red packet. Bill, Constantine said with a snap of his fingers. Anna walked over and looked at the plate in front of Constantine. She thought for a while, and said, A braised chicken and rice, a Yeongju fried rice, and a savory tofu pudding. That's 16 gold coins in total. The extra is your tip. Keep the change. Constantine took out 2 dragon coins and handed them to Anna with a smile. He glanced at Shirley, and walked to the door without any hesitation. The biggest mistake in wooing a girl was pestering her. That would only make you seem worthless, and make the girl hate you. You wouldn't be able to get a girl like that, especially a beautiful girl. As a veteran in the field of love, Constantine, who had calmed down, started to return to his hunting instinct. He already knew how to capture this thorny rose. Good gentlemanly manners, coupled with a rich appearance, were the ultimate essentials for him to be undefeated in the field of love for many years. But Anna held the 2 dragon coins. Before she could finish her sentence, Constantine had already left. What a rude fellow. He didn't even listen to my Anna's words. Shirley looked at the back of the figure disappearing at the door with a hint of displeasure in her eyes. Sister Shirley, what's a tip? Why did he give me a tip? How should I deal with it? Anna asked Shirley in confusion. That fellow is probably too arrogant. You can ask Mr. Mac how to deal with it. Shirley gestured in the direction of the kitchen. Uncle Meg, that uncle spent a total of 16 gold coins, and then he left after giving me 2 dragon coins. He said the rest would be my tip. How should I deal with it? Anna asked Meg as she ran to the kitchen door. Chapter 947. The morning service passed by without any hiccups. Apart from the fact that it was Anna's first time collecting money, she didn't make any mistakes with Yarbemia and Barbla's help. Once she got used to it, she should be able to catch up to Sally's efficiency. Furthermore, with the division of labor, there was still room for improvement. Thank you for your hard work. Meg smiled as he looked at Shirley, who was slumped on the table without caring about her image after cleaning the entire restaurant. He placed a glass of warm water in front of her gently. I didn't expect such a simple task to be so tiring after repeated hundreds of times. This is not something an elf should do. Shirley looked at Meg through the transparent glass with a hint of resentment. Uncle Meg has to cook so many delicacies for all the customers alone. That's the most tiring, Anna said as she held the glass of water and shook her head. She looked at Meg with adoration. Good girl. Meg patted Anna's head with a smile. This little one's words were so warm that even he had the urge to give her a tip. Hee hee. Anna smiled obediently like a kitten. Shirley, who was slumped on the table, suddenly sat up. She looked at Meg warily, and then said with a relaxed expression, Is it tiring? I don't think so at all. This is a piece of cake for me. Big sister Shirley is awesome too, Anna said with a smile as she turned to look at Shirley. Shouldn't I be awesome? Shirley said matter-of-factly, but she couldn't hide the smile in her eyes. Yes, Shirley's magic is also very powerful. The restaurant is as clean as Aisha's cleaning. Yarbemia agreed wholeheartedly. She looked at Shirley with envy. If only she knew magic, too. Meg said with a smile, It's free time from now until 11 p.m. You can arrange the time however you want. We'll have lunch around 11 p.m. If you want to have lunch, you have to come back earlier. Then I'm going to the ice cream shop. Anna, Shirley, do you want to come over and play for a while? MIA asked Shirley and Anna as she took off her apron. I want to learn how to cook with Sister Phyllis and Uncle Meg, so I won't go with Sister MIA. Anna shook her head. Shirley stood up, shook her head, and said, I'm going somewhere. I'm not going either. After everyone left, Meg began to instruct Phyllis and Anna. Phyllis continued to learn how to make beef kebabs. After a few days of practice, her beef kebabs were starting to look good, but they were still far from perfect. However, when it came to mixing sauces, she was extremely talented. She could perfectly mix all 3 flavors of sauces. In terms of control, she was indeed very talented. Anna, on the other hand, continued with the unfinished lessons. The little girl did not have any experience in cooking, so Meg asked her to start with knife skills. After she had a solid foundation in knife skills, she could start with other skills. Ding! Congratulations, host. As you have taken in 2 disciples, you have triggered the Good Teacher badge and obtained a chance to teach a disciple. After using it, the other party will enter the test field for the God of Cookery in their sleep and obtain a trial opportunity. At this moment, the system's voice suddenly sounded. Meg raised his eyebrows. Looking at the shiny badge in his mind, he said in surprise, System, what the hell is this good teacher? If other people also enter the test field, won't you be exposed? Don't worry, host. If the host does not take the initiative to mention it, no one will know about the existence of the test field for the God of Cookery. The person who is taught enters the test field for the God of Cookery, and when they wake up, they will only think that it is a dream, the system replied. That's good. Meg looked at Phyllis, who was putting aside the slightly charred beef kebab and putting another kebab on the grill, and said, Then I'll give this chance to Phyllis. With her current progress, She should be able to completely learn how to make beef kebab after entering the test field for the god of cookery once. A golden light flew out from the badge and entered Phyllis's forehead. Teaching successful, the system's voice sounded. Meg saw that Phyllis and Anna did not seem to notice the golden light, so he was relieved. Then, he asked curiously, "System, what's the use of this badge? As the god of cookery, conquering the world with Chinese cuisine is not the end. Let Chinese cuisine take root and truly change the eating habits of the world. Let more people fall in love with cooking and love life. This is the true meaning. The badge is a reward for the host's contribution to promoting food culture. After the host triggers 3 badges, the host will receive a special reward," the system replied. "There's such a good thing. Then what should I do to trigger more badges?" Meg's eyes lit up. He liked business with rewards the most. The host only needs to do his best to promote Chinese cuisine. The rest is up to fate. That's as good as not saying anything. Meg rolled his eyes. After ending the conversation with the system, Meg also had some new ideas in his mind. As the system said, if he was the only one in the world who could cook Chinese cuisine, although diners would flock to him like a flock of ducks, after 100 years, there would no longer be Peking duck and Laji Rugiamo in this world. How lonely that would be. Meg sighed silently. The feeling of being able to decide the height of food culture in the world was really cool. As for the matter of opening the menu, he was not stupid. How could he do such a stupid thing when he had not earned enough money? Meg was in a good mood. He made himself a cup of tea and leisurely oversaw the work on the side. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Mag opened the door with a teacup in his hand. She, who was wearing a red windbreaker, was standing at the door with a balding middle-aged man who was wearing a pair of thick spectacles with a black briefcase under his armpit. He was wearing a pair of thick, large-framed glasses. "Mr. Meg, there's something I want to talk to you about. I wonder if you have time now?" Hill looked at Meg and said with a smile. Meg's eyes stayed on the windbreaker on Hill for a while. Wasn't this the windbreaker he gave to Gloria? It seemed that Gloria had already started selling it. The style was very proper and the workmanship was very fine. When worn on Hill, it looked very neat and added a bit of momentum. "Of course, please come in." Meg stood aside with a smile and nodded slightly to the balding middle-aged man. Hill entered the restaurant and glanced at Phyllis and Anna in the kitchen. He then pointed to the man beside him and said, "Let me introduce you. This is Burrell, the chief engineer in charge of the steam locomotive project. Hello, Mr. Meg. It's a pleasure to meet you. You are an admirable genius designer." Burrell stepped forward and shook Meg's hands with both hands. His eyes were full of admiration. "It's a pleasure to meet you too. Please sit down." Meg smiled and nodded. This uncle looked a bit like his university tutor. It was quite amiable. Chapter 948. So fast. Meg looked at Hill in shock. He had just handed the final blueprint to Hill before he went to Rodu, and it had only been half a month since then. Yet, Hill had already built the first steam locomotive, and even carried out the preliminary tests. This was simply godlike speed. "We hope to open up a route from Chaos City to Vic Mountain before the negotiations begin in 3 months' time, and complete the route. If there are no problems with the tests, the steam locomotive and the rails will enter the stage of mass production. The bank and the city lord's castle are very determined." Hill nodded with a smile. Meg pondered for a while. He looked at Hill, and shook his head slightly. "I'm afraid it's not an easy task to build a railway that's hundreds of kilometers long from nothing in 3 months. Just the construction of the rails is a huge project, not to mention the topography required to lay the rails. Although I acknowledge the ability of the City Lord's castle and the financial power of Buffett Banks, I have to remind Miss Hill that the railway is a livelihood project. The safety and reliability of the railway concerns the lives of everyone on the train. You can't be too perfunctory just because you're in a rush." Although he didn't know much about politics, he roughly understood why she was so anxious to complete the opening of a section of the railway before the negotiation of the peace agreement began. This was to increase the bargaining chip on the negotiation table between Chaos City and Buffett Banks. When it came to a financial group like Buffett Banks, The rise and fall of a country or a city wasn't enough to decide. However, stability and peace were the most important factors in the bank's business. Once the Norland continent descended into total chaos due to war, Buffett banks wouldn't be far from collapsing. Chaos City was born after the war ended. If war resumed, it would be in a very awkward position, and might even become the target of public criticism. Although Chaos City's power had been increasing in the past 100 years, it was still just a city, and couldn't compete with the other races. Furthermore, Chaos City was founded on peace, so it naturally wouldn't want war to resume. To a large extent, the introduction of the steam locomotive was to calm the other races down and see the possibility of racial integration. However, Meg was still an engineering man at the end of the day. No matter what the capitalists and politicians thought, apart from transporting goods, the steam locomotive also bore the heavy responsibility of basic passenger transport. Safety was undoubtedly very important, and he could not afford to be careless. Burrell, who was at the side, looked at Mag with a serious expression, and said, "We all understand what Mr. Mag is saying. 3 months is the shortest time limit that our engineering department came up with after much deliberation and discussion. From the east of Chaos City to Vic Mountain, it was basically a flat area. Furthermore, the geology was stable, so the amount of work required to lay the tracks would be reduced significantly. Furthermore, we have recruited a large number of blacksmiths and fire mags from many races. We have also used a large number of magic tools and set up a large number of rail manufacturing points along the railway to ensure the quantity and quality of the rails." Blair took out a few blueprints from his bag as he spoke. There was a topographic map of Chaos City in the direction of Vic Mountain, a planning map of the manufacturing site, and some presets and solutions for problems that might be encountered during the laying of the railway tracks. Meg looked through those blueprints carefully, and only came to one conclusion in his heart: rich. He was more or less a rich second-generation heir in his previous life. He was not someone who had not seen the world, but with his father's capital, building a highway was already the limit. It was impossible for him to use so much manpower and material resources to build a railway on a barren plain in less than 3 months under the conditions of a completely backward heavy industry, using fire mags and dwarven blacksmiths as coolies. To be so rich, other than the national wealth, Meg could not imagine that Buffett Banks, a financial group, would dare to play like this. If the hill was not out of her mind, then Buffett Banks' wealth was a little more exaggerated than he had imagined. That money network that covered the entire Norland continent had brought unimaginable wealth to Buffett Banks. Miss Hill, who was sitting opposite him with a smile, looked very normal, so it was obviously the latter. "Mr. Meg, please believe in our determination and attitude," Miss Hill said to Meg with a smile. "Seems like Miss Hill really values this steam locomotive project," Meg said with a complicated expression as he handed the blueprints back to Blair. Miss Hill was taking a big gamble. If she lost, Buffett Banks might be dragged into the abyss. This was not building a car. "I believe that Mr. Meg's outstanding creation will bring great changes to this world," Miss Hill said with a smile as she looked deeply at Meg. Meg looked away with a smile, and said, "Miss Hill, when would you like me to visit the completed locomotive?" "If it's convenient for Mr. Meg, you can go now," Miss Hill said. Meg glanced at the clock on the wall, and shook his head. "It might not be convenient now. I have to prepare for the noon business soon. If it's possible, I can go over at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Mr. Meg is really a good boss. I will send someone to pick you up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon." Miss Hill stood up and nodded at Meg with a smile before turning to walk to the door. "Goodbye, Mr. Meg." Blair put away the blueprints and shook Meg's hand before quickly catching up with Miss Hill. Technology can indeed speed up when it meets a huge amount of money. Meg looked at Miss Hill's back and sighed silently. With Miss Hill's push, this world would enter the age of steam soon. Meg was not sure whether this was good or bad. After all, this was a world of swords and magic. The experience on Earth was not applicable. However, one thing was for sure. If the railway to Vic Mountain was really completed in 3 months, it would definitely have a certain impact on the upcoming peace talks. As one of the leaders, Buffett Bank would also be tied to Chaos City, and would have the opportunity to stand on the negotiation table with all the races. Satisfy all the requests from the engineering department. Is there a conclusion to the negotiation between the City Lord's castle and the goblins? Miss Hill asked the secretary sitting opposite her after she got on the horse-drawn carriage. The news just came back. The negotiation has basically been finalized. Due to the possible turmoil and the long-standing wish of the elves and the forest trolls, the goblins are willing to form an alliance with Chaos City. They will also open up the various underground mineral resources to us and Chaos City, the secretary said with a nod. Very good. Miss Hill nodded. She lifted a corner of the curtain and glanced at Amy's. Come and fetch Mr. Meg to the construction site at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Chapter 949. Derek was one of the senior reviewers of Rodu's Gourmet magazine, and was also recognized as the #1 vegetarian reviewer in the culinary world. As a vegetarian, Derek focused on vegetarian reviews, and was the favorite reviewer of vegetarians. He was an expert in this field. At Robert's invitation, he specially came to Chaos City from Rodu to do a vegetarian review and ranking for the completely revised Delicious Cuisine rankings. Derek had lived in Chaos City for a period of time when he was young, and was friends with Old Laurie despite their age difference. It could be said that he was influenced by Old Laurie when he was young, and that was why he embarked on the path of being a food reviewer. When Old Laurie created the Delicious Cuisine rankings, he had also participated in it for a period of time, so he had some feelings for it. It was also because of this that he agreed without much thought when Robert approached him this time. However, he didn't have high expectations before coming over. Chaos City's culinary atmosphere was very different from Rodu's because it lacked a strong foundation and innovative chefs. Although he hadn't been to Chaos City for close to 20 years, he had tried a few restaurants according to the Food Association's list this morning. Just as he expected, there weren't any vegetarian dishes that could make his eyes light up. There were also many restaurants that had meat as their signature dishes, but their attitude towards vegetarian dishes was almost perfunctory. This made his meal a little unpleasant. Fortunately, he promised Robert that he would only do one review before returning to Rodu. He probably wouldn't return to Chaos City again. Amy's was the 6th restaurant he chose because there was a small line of words at the back. This restaurant has a lot of customers. It's best for reviewers to line up in advance to avoid wasting too much time in the queue. Hence, he brought this restaurant that was at the back of the queue to the front. He wanted to see what kind of restaurant it was that the Food Association would specially write a reminder. The restaurant opened at 11:30 a.m., and he arrived at 11 a.m. To his surprise, there were already customers lining up spontaneously at the restaurant's entrance. There were over 20 people in 2 lines. This indeed surprised Derek. There were a few popular restaurants in Rodu, and there were indeed customers who would line up in advance. However, those were all very famous restaurants with excellent reputations and capabilities, but there were only 3 to 5 such restaurants. He didn't expect this restaurant in the most remote corner of Chaos City to be so popular. Furthermore, as time passed, more and more customers lined up behind him. Before the doors even opened, the line had already reached the plaza. There were at least 300 to 400 people. What made him feel even more curious was that these 2 lines didn't seem to be arranged randomly. Instead, they seemed to be divided into gangs. Because of something called tofu pudding, they were arguing until their faces turned red, and they were on the verge of fighting. I didn't expect this restaurant to be so popular. I just don't know what the main dish of this restaurant is, and if they will put in effort to cook vegetarian dishes. Derek thought to himself curiously. As a vegetarian, he had not touched any meat dishes for more than 20 years. Young man, this is my first time here. Are there any vegetarian dishes worth recommending? Derek asked the young man beside him. Vegetarian? The young man thought for a while and hesitated. I'm not sure if the sweet tofu pudding is a vegetarian dish, but the savory tofu pudding is definitely a vegetarian dish. Uncle, if this is your first time here, then you're in the wrong line. The savory tofu pudding is the right choice for you. Uncle, don't be fooled by him. Tofu pudding should be eaten sweet. Only sweet tofu pudding can be called a vegetarian dish. The savory tofu pudding is heresy. The young lady standing behind Derek said indignantly. She even glared at the young man after that. Savory and sweet tofu pudding? Derek pondered. So, the tofu pudding that they had been arguing about for a long time was actually a dish, and the reason for their argument was actually just the taste. Derek felt a little embarrassed as he watched the young man and young lady arguing. He quickly said, "In that case, I'll order 1 serving of each flavor. You don't have to argue. Uncle, you're dreaming." The young lady rolled her eyes. Mr. Mack has made a rule that each person can only order 1 serving of tofu pudding. Uncle, if you want to eat it, you have to choose a flavor. Everyone wants to have another bowl of tofu pudding. Also, they provide 200 servings of tofu pudding for every meal. If you come late, you won't be able to eat it, the young man explained. There's such a rule? Derek raised his eyebrows in surprise. However, when he looked at the long line behind him, he understood. There were so many customers. If they didn't limit the amount of food they could buy, the customers at the back would probably have queued for nothing. Actually, this tofu pudding can't be considered a vegetarian dish. It can only be considered a snack. Uncle, if you want to eat vegetarian dishes, you might not be full at Immerse. Even the Yangju fried rice has eggs in it. You might not be able to accept stinky tofu. Besides, that's also considered a snack, the young lady said. Is that so? Derek was a little disappointed. It seemed that this was also a restaurant that focused on meat. Mr. Mack has a new dish today. Maybe it's a vegetarian dish, the young man consoled him. Didn't you see what's written on the signboard? Today's dish is eggplant with garlic sauce. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like a vegetarian dish, right? The young lady immediately poured cold water on him. This. The young man pondered for a while and scratched his head. It really doesn't look like a vegetarian dish. It's okay. I'll just try the tofu pudding, Derek said with a smile. He had waited in line for so long, but he didn't even get to try a vegetarian dish. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't disappointed. However, the tofu pudding that so many customers were arguing over had to have something special. The restaurant was about to open for business, so it wouldn't hurt to try it before moving on to the next restaurant. It's amazing. It's just eggplant. There's no fish in it at all, but why does it emit a fishy aroma? It's so delicious. Yabemia couldn't help but exclaim after taking a bite of the eggplant with garlic sauce. The others also looked at the half-eaten eggplant with garlic sauce in amazement. The eggplant was cut into the shape of a fish, and then a scale-like incision was made on the back of the eggplant with garlic sauce. It was a combination of sweet, sour, salty, and spicy. Father, I want another bowl of rice. The eggplant with garlic sauce is too delicious. Amy showed her empty bowl and stuck out her tongue to lick a drop of sauce from the corner of her mouth. She smacked her lips and revealed a sweet smile. Okay. Meg took the bowl with a smile and got up to get more rice. There was probably nothing in the world that would make him happier than Amy giving him another bowl of rice. Chapter 950. Lunch ended with everyone ordering another bowl. The sour, sweet, salty, and spicy eggplant with garlic sauce was well received by everyone. Meg was naturally very satisfied with this. This was the first dish that he had truly learned on his own. The sense of accomplishment was indescribable. Welcome to Immerse. Meg opened the restaurant's door and smiled at the customers lining up at the entrance. The customers entered the restaurant one after another, greeted Meg, and chose their favorite seats. Mr. Mack, is this new dish, eggplant with garlic sauce, made with fish? Harrison asked Meg curiously as he entered. Many customers looked at Meg curiously. Every time a new dish was released, it was the most interesting moment. No, this is a vegetarian dish. Meg shook his head with a smile. He did not pretend to be mysterious. It's a vegetarian dish. Is it really made with eggplant? Oh, eggplant is the food that I hate the most. It's so soft, it's so scary. I hate the taste of eggplant, too, but my neighbor loves it. He always asks me to eat at his place. Then your neighbor must be a forest troll. You even know that. The customers started discussing when they heard that. However, most of them did not have a good impression of eggplant. Vegetarian dish. Eggplant. Derek, who had just sat down, looked at Meg and could not help but feel curious. Eggplant was also one of the foods that he hated. Whether it was the terrible texture or the smell that was difficult to get rid of, it was enough to make him stay away. However, this restaurant owner said that this was a vegetarian dish, and it could be the only vegetarian dish in this restaurant. Since they were here, regardless of their preferences, it was basic professional etiquette to try it. Meg did not explain further. It was not strange that people did not like eggplant. Those who liked it would naturally enjoy it. He returned to the kitchen with a smile. Of course, the main reason was that they had not tried eggplant with garlic sauce yet. Otherwise, they would definitely fall in love with eggplant. The customers began to order. Due to their resistance to the taste of eggplant, not many customers chose to order eggplant with garlic sauce. Of course, more customers were hesitating between ordering and not ordering, waiting for the real warriors to try it first. Derek looked around the restaurant, and his first impression was that it was comfortable. Whether it was the lighting in the restaurant, the decorations of the tables and chairs, or the dense green plants hanging on the railings, everything made him feel comfortable and relaxed. After careful observation, he could feel the cleanliness of the dining hall. There was not a single speck of dust. Even the cracks of the tables, which were difficult to clean, did not have the slightest bit of dirt. There should be a professional mage who cleaned the place to achieve such a level of cleanliness. However, what made him a little uncomfortable was the fact that he was sharing a table. He looked at the orc sitting opposite him and the wolf-headed devil sitting beside him. His face was a little guarded, and he felt a little nervous. Having lived in Chaos City for a period of time, he naturally knew that Chaos City was a city where many races lived together. However, he was used to living in Rodu, so he was more or less guarded against other races. Furthermore, sitting at the same table with a devil and an orc was an experience he had never had before, so he felt a little uncomfortable. Even the most basic racial segregation is not done. The restaurant's dining environment can only be rated 1 star at most. Sitting at the same table with an orc and a devil, even if there are delicacies in front of me, I won't be able to enjoy it wholeheartedly, Derek thought to himself. His anticipation for the eggplant with garlic sauce was completely gone. He just wanted to taste it and leave immediately. "Sir, what do you want to order?" Yarbemia came to Derek with a smile. "Give me a moment. Let me see." Derek took the menu and flipped it open. All the delicacies with pictures on them came into view. Even a vegetarian like him could not help but salivate when he saw those colorful dishes. However, his gaze quickly skipped over the meat dishes and landed on the snack section. The sweet tofu pudding and the savory tofu pudding were different. The porcelain bowl was filled with white tofu pudding, while the savory tofu pudding was covered with some small side dishes. Meanwhile, the sweet tofu pudding should have been drizzled with golden red syrup. They all looked very tempting. After hesitating for a while, Derek still chose the sweet tofu pudding. Then, he flipped the menu to a page and looked at the only dish in the vegetarian section: eggplant with garlic sauce. In the picture, there were 2 fish on a long plate. The golden red syrup was drizzled over them. No matter how one looked at it, they looked like 2 fish. There was no eggplant at all. The price of a serving was 400 copper coins. At the same time, it was stated that a bowl of rice was 50 copper coins. Refills were not allowed. Derek stared at the picture for a while before looking up at Yarbemia. "Are you sure this is a vegetarian dish?" "Yes, this is a vegetarian dish. There are no meat dishes." Yarbemia nodded. No customer had ordered the eggplant with garlic sauce before. She almost couldn't help but tell them how delicious the eggplant with garlic sauce was. It would be a pity to miss it. She wondered if this customer would be the first to order the eggplant with garlic sauce. After receiving Yarbemia's confirmation, Derek closed the menu and said, "I'd like a sweet tofu pudding, a eggplant with garlic sauce, and a bowl of rice." "Okay, please wait a moment." Yarbemia's eyes lit up. Finally, a customer ordered the eggplant with garlic sauce. According to past experience, this meant that other customers would follow suit soon. "Wow, bro, you even eat eggplant. You're a scary person." The werewolf sitting beside him looked at Derek in horror. You're a true warrior. The orc sitting opposite him also gave him a thumbs up. I'm curious if Mr. Mac's eggplant will become another delicacy. Bro, I'll rely on you to test the poison, the young man sitting diagonally across from him said with a smile. Okay. Derek nodded his head awkwardly. The two demons and orcs were different from the ferocious image he had in mind. Instead, he could feel the friendliness they exuded. He didn't expect to become a warrior just by ordering eggplant with garlic sauce. Boss, a customer ordered the eggplant with garlic sauce, Yarbemia said excitedly as she returned to the kitchen. Roger that. Meg nodded. He took an eggplant from the shelf at the side. It was longer than a normal eggplant, but shorter and fatter than a long eggplant. He cut it in half like a fish that was cut in half. He flipped the kitchen knife in his hand, and a thin layer of eggplant skin was peeled off. Between the movements of the knife, the two slices of eggplant became fish. The crisscrossing knife cut thin scales on the eggplant and went deep into the eggplant, but didn't sever it. 2 pots were heated at the same time. After half of the oil was heated, he placed the eggplant into the pot with the most oil and fried it. In the other pot, he added some oil, minced garlic, ginger, pickled pepper, and a spoonful of the secret bin paste. After stir-frying, he added the red oil. He then added sugar, vinegar, and a small amount of starch to make the fish sauce. The eggplant that was fried until its skin was slightly golden was placed on a plate. The boiling hot and thick fish sauce was poured over the eggplant. Sizzle. There was a soft sound. A serving of eggplant with garlic sauce that was sour, sweet, salty, and spicy with all flavors was ready. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com wonderful book mobile version website, .com. Chapter 951. Your eggplant with garlic sauce and rice. Yarbemia walked over and placed the freshly cooked eggplant with garlic sauce and a bowl of rice in front of Derek with a smile. Everyone's gaze landed on Derek and the eggplant with garlic sauce in front of him. However, Derek's gaze was completely attracted by the eggplant with garlic sauce in front of him. The freshly cooked eggplant with garlic sauce was still emitting steam, and the rich aroma wafted over together with the steam. It was a very special aroma. It was a little like the aroma of the fish from the Green Carp restaurant in Rodu. That was the most famous restaurant in Rodu for eating fish. He liked the stir-fried lotus root slices there, so he often went there to try it. Naturally, he was no stranger to the aroma. It wasn't accurate to say that it was the aroma of the fish. It should be said that it was the aroma of the spices and side dishes cooked together with the fish. Furthermore, compared to the aroma of the fish from the Green Carp restaurant, this aroma was even more alluring. Even his picky nose couldn't detect any fishy smell. Just the aroma alone was enough to make him salivate. On the long plate, there was a fish that had been split in the middle. The golden red sauce covered the fish, and the translucent red color had seeped into the meat of the fish perfectly. However, when Derek took a closer look, he realized that it wasn't fish on the plate, but eggplant that had been cut into the shape of a fish. As the eggplant was peeled and cut with a knife, it was slightly golden yellow after being fried. It looked just like a real fish. Derek's eyes lit up. He was a little surprised and puzzled as he thought, what a strange cooking method. Furthermore, I really don't see any fish. Then, where did this rich aroma come from? Could it be that fish soup is used? If fish soup is used, it shouldn't be placed in the vegetarian section, right? It smells so good. It looks just like a real fish, and the aroma is even more fragrant than a real fish. Is this really the smell of an eggplant? Bro, quick, try it. I want to have one too. The 3 people at the same table were already swallowing their saliva. The young man couldn't help but urge. Since we've already ordered it, let's have a taste. Derek hesitated for a moment, but still picked up his chopsticks and picked up the eggplant. The eggplant was softer than he had imagined. The golden red fish sauce seeped into the eggplant perfectly. It didn't have the usual unappetizing white color of the eggplant. It was slightly oily, and even Derek couldn't help but swallow his saliva. I hope it wasn't cooked with fish soup. Otherwise, I'll definitely give a 0 rating, Derek thought before putting the eggplant into his mouth. This taste. Derek's eyes lit up instantly. Sour, Spicy, sweet, and salty flavors exploded in his mouth at the same time. He had never experienced such an impact in his 20 years of eating vegetarian food. His usually calm taste buds were stimulated in an instant. It was like a dormant volcano suddenly erupting with lava, stimulating his tongue crazily. Every taste was so prominent, but when they blended together, it was so harmonious that one couldn't help but indulge in it. The soft eggplant almost melted in his mouth. His taste buds experienced a crazy feast of taste. He swallowed it gently, and the lingering fragrance lingered in his mouth. Unbelievable. Is this really an eggplant? How did the food that I didn't like become so delicious? Derek exclaimed as he savored the lingering fragrance in his mouth. What shocked him even more was that this eggplant with garlic sauce didn't contain any fish-related ingredients. Even the sauce didn't contain any fish soup. Yet, such a pure vegetarian dish was so delicious that even meat dishes couldn't compare to it. Only one bite. Derek had completely forgotten about this. He picked up the bowl in front of him and took a bite of rice. The rice tasted sweeter and sweeter with the lingering fragrance in his mouth. One bite of eggplant with garlic sauce, one bite of rice. It was so delicious that he couldn't stop eating. How can there be such a delicious vegetarian dish in this world? This completely overturns my definition of a vegetarian dish. It's supposed to be a vegetarian dish that cleanses one's heart of desires. How can it make one so greedy that they can't bear to part with their chopsticks? Oh, it's really too delicious. Derek was struggling in his heart, but in the end, he chose to give up. Give me another bowl of rice, please. Derek put down the empty bowl in his hand and looked at Yarbemia. Gulp. Everyone around them swallowed their saliva. Mr. Mac is a pervert. Don't tell me he really made eggplant into a delicacy. Looking at this bro's performance, it's highly possible. Mr. Mac is still the Mr. Mac. There's nothing in this world that Mr. Mac can't make into a delicacy. Miss Mia, give me a helping of eggplant with garlic sauce, please. The customers couldn't sit still anymore. Those who were hesitant at first started to order. Watching a mukbang broadcast was more tempting than any slogan. All right, please wait a moment. Yarbemia took Derek's bowl of rice with a smile. At the same time, she took the new orders one by one and walked to the kitchen with light footsteps. As expected, once someone tried it, other customers would order the eggplant with garlic sauce very quickly, and it would receive good reviews as usual. Derek got his second bowl of rice very quickly, and finished it with the remaining eggplant with garlic sauce. In the end, he even picked up a bit of garlic from the plate, and mixed it with the last mouthful of rice. Delicacies are indeed the most satisfying, Derek said with satisfaction. Derek said with satisfaction as he put down the bowl and chopsticks. He hadn't experienced such satisfaction in a long time. I didn't expect to be able to eat such delicious vegetarian dishes in Chaos City. Seems like I'm too narrow-minded. Derek couldn't help but think self-deprecatingly when he thought of his previous judgment. Even he had never tasted such delicious vegetarian dishes before. Stunning wasn't enough to describe it. It was a taste that made him want to eat more. Here's your sweet tofu pudding. Please enjoy. At this moment, Yarbemia came over with a bowl of sweet tofu pudding, and placed it gently in front of Derek. Thank you. Derek, who was in a good mood, nodded with a smile. Then, he sized up the tofu pudding that the customers were arguing about. The golden red sticky syrup was poured over the white tofu pudding, and the faint fragrance of beans and sweet sugar wafted into his nose. Dessert after the meal? Seems good. Derek picked up the spoon and scooped up a spoonful of tofu pudding. It was a little like egg custard, and the snow-white cut was quickly covered by the syrup. It swayed slightly in the spoon, and was as exquisite as a piece of art. The sweet and tender tofu pudding melted in his mouth. The syrup wrapped around it was so rich, and the sweetness blended perfectly with the tofu pudding. After swallowing a mouthful of tofu pudding, he didn't feel the sweetness at all. There was a faint tofu pudding taste left in his mouth. It was sweet but not greasy, and he couldn't help but take another spoonful. This boss must be a genius, Derek complimented in his heart as he enjoyed the delicious tofu pudding. 10 minutes later, Derek paid the bill and walked out of Mammoth. 5-star. Do I have any other choice? Derek turned back to look at Mammoth, and touched his stomach with satisfaction. Let's call it a day for lunch. I don't want to try the next restaurant anymore. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com, wonderful book mobile version website, .com. Chapter 952. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. My dear sister, you've put on such a good amount of weight. Page 11. The introduction of eggplant with garlic sauce had greatly boosted the sales of rice, so it was inevitable that more rice would be added. Otherwise, no one would be willing to leave the remaining half of the eggplant with garlic sauce. I can't take it anymore. From tomorrow onwards, I'll only order a sweet tofu pudding when I come to Mammoth. I've already gained 5 kilograms this month. I've gained weight too. But my husband doesn't mind. Instead, he said, it feels better. Forget it. I heard you say that last month. But my dear sister, you've put on such a good amount of weight. Of course it feels good. Even I want to touch it. I'm so jealous. A few noble women walked out of the restaurant, chatting and joking with each other. Their faces were full of satisfaction. The restaurant's opening hours were over. Yabemia flipped the wooden sign over the door, closed the door, and heaved a long sigh of relief. Everyone in the restaurant heaved sighs of relief almost at the same time. After the restaurant had doubled in size, the intensity of work had more than doubled. After more than an hour, the fatigue was too strong. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. I have to go out for a while. I'll leave the rest of the work to you. Meg came out of the kitchen, took off his apron, and hung it at the side. He went upstairs to change into casual clothes, and then went downstairs to walk out the door. There was already a horse-drawn carriage with the Buffett family emblem parked at the door. A middle-aged man who looked like a secretary was standing in front of the carriage. When he saw Meg coming out, he went up to him with a smile. Mr. Meg, Miss Hill asked me to pick you up. All right. Meg nodded slightly. This was one of Miss Hill's personal secretaries. He had met him before. Meg got into the horse-drawn carriage, and the secretary sat across from him with a smile. However, he didn't initiate a conversation with him. Meg didn't ask too many questions, either. The steam locomotive was supposed to be a highly confidential matter. He wasn't sure if this secretary had the authority to know about it. The horse-drawn carriage moved forward steadily, and exited Chaos City from the East City Gate. After driving along the main road for a while, it entered a side path and continued on its way. Meg wasn't too surprised by this. Building a train was a massive undertaking, so it naturally couldn't be carried out in Chaos City. Otherwise, the entire Norland continent would know about it by the next day. Furthermore, Mr. Hill said that the first section of the railway was going to Vic Mountain. That meant that Buffett Bank and Chaos City had already reached an agreement with the goblins, so it wasn't strange for them to build a base in the east of the city. The unicorn's speed was very fast, but it still took about half an hour before it stopped in front of a large mountain. Mr. Meg, we're here. The secretary stood up and got out of the carriage. Meg lifted a corner of the carriage's curtain and glanced at the seemingly ordinary stone wall. His eyes narrowed slightly as he could feel a faint aura of magic coming from the stone wall. Some kind of magic array should have been used to conceal the entrance. However, Meg's face didn't show the slightest bit of abnormality. Lowering the curtain, he got up and followed out of the carriage. Looking at the stone wall with a face of surprise, he said, "Here?" "Yes." The secretary nodded with a smile. He took out a black token from his pocket, and pressed it directly on the stone wall. A golden ripple appeared on the stone wall that looked like an ordinary stone. With a twist of space, a whirlpool that could accommodate one person appeared on the stone wall. "Mr. Meg, please come in," the secretary said to Meg with a smile. Meg hesitated for a moment, and walked straight in. After a short moment of darkness, the light became bright all of a sudden. Meg squinted slightly. After adjusting to the light, he looked around, and his eyes lit up immediately. This was a large passage that was over 10 meters wide and close to 20 meters high. 2 parallel tracks were laid on the ground, extending all the way in. There seemed to be an even bigger space inside. Above his head, the light from the magic array illuminated the passage. Meg felt as if he had come to a giant's cave. Soon, Meg felt a few senses sweep over his body. If he wasn't mistaken, they were at least the mental senses of magicians above the 9th level. There was even a 10th level magician among them. Sure enough, it's a big deal. Meg secretly praised in his heart. To be able to let a great magician guard the base here, the importance that Buffett Banks and the City Lord's office attached to the steam locomotive could be imagined. Mr. Meg, please come with me. Miss Hill and the City Lord are already waiting in front. The secretary looked at Meg and smiled. Lord Michael is also here? Meg was a little surprised. Yes. The secretary nodded, but didn't explain much. Meg followed the secretary into the depths of the cave. As they went deeper, the sound of metal hitting metal gradually increased. After about 5 minutes of walking, a huge cast cave appeared in front of Meg. Crisscrossing tracks filled the cast cave. The dwarven blacksmith's heavy hammers smashed a string of sparks on the iron blocks. The magicians cast magic to melt the iron into molten iron, extract the iron, and then mold it into the required shape. The work was in full swing. On the centermost hanging platform, a 4-section steam locomotive displayed its extraordinary iron bones. It was a steam locomotive that was about twice as wide as an ordinary train. It looks like it. Meg stopped and looked up at the steam locomotive with its chimney pointing to the sky, revealing a smile. Mr. Mac, you're here. At this time, a forthright voice sounded from the side. Meg turned around with a smile, and said, I've kept the City Lord and Miss Hill waiting. Mammoth is the face of Chaos City now. It's naturally important to satisfy the customers. Besides, we just finished our discussion. Mr. Mac, you came at the right time. Michael shook his head with a smile. Hill smiled at Meg, and said, Mr. Meg is very punctual. However, if you're going back to prepare dinner, let's start the assessment first. Miss Hill, you know me well. Let's go and take a look now. Meg nodded. Of course, it was very important to go back and prepare dinner. After all, he didn't even apply for leave. It wouldn't be good to stand up a customer for no reason. Mr. Meg, please come with me. The chief engineer at the side led Meg to the centermost hanging platform, and a human-powered lift lifted them up to the platform. Mr. Meg is the designer, and you've made the actual product yourself. Naturally, you're very familiar with the structure of the steam locomotive. However, during the manufacturing process, we made some changes to the details after our discussion. Burrell led Meg around the steam locomotive and began to explain it in detail. An hour later, Meg handed a page that was almost filled with words to Burrell, and smilingly said, The parts that I think need to be changed are all here. You can refer to it, Chief Burrell. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 953. Mr. Meg's suggestion hit the nail on the head and solved many of our problems. We should have consulted you earlier. Blair solemnly put away the piece of paper and looked at Meg with some shame. If he had doubts when he first took over the steam locomotive project, his admiration for Meg, the designer, grew stronger as the project progressed. Furthermore, after today's on-site inspection, Mag pointed out the crux of the problem, and even provided the simplest solution. This made Burrell admire Mag even more. Such a person could only be called a genius if he could come up with a bold and imaginative idea that could be implemented. You flatter me. Although there are some problems that have to be solved, if there is a straight track here, we should be able to conduct a straight driving test. Meg said with a smile. He, who was standing on the shoulders of his predecessors, did not feel that he had anything to be proud of. Blair, who could build such a steam locomotive in such a short time with only a blueprint and a simple model, was worthy of the title of a great engineer. There is a straight track of about 1 kilometer in the base. Blair's face lit up, but he lowered his voice and said, But before the trial run, we have to clear the place first. Meg nodded slightly. It seemed that even within the project, it was also confidential. The two of them landed again. Blair briefly reported the situation to Michael and the Hill, and then began to command the clearing work. The busy dwarf blacksmiths and mags were quickly ordered to leave and enter the passage at the side. The entire cave suddenly became quiet and empty. The lift platform slowly lowered the steam locomotive to the ground. The staff entered the locomotive and shoveled coal into the boiler. Black smoke rose from the chimney. The air pressure has reached the threshold. Start. Woo woo woo. Following the voice of the staff, a loud whistle sounded. Steam gushed out, and the huge steam locomotive began to move forward slowly. Besides. The friction between the train wheels and the rails made a deafening sound. The ground trembled slightly as if a giant beast was slowly awakening. The steam locomotive began to speed up and move forward steadily. They didn't rely on any animal power, nor did they need any magicians or knights to control them. They were just a group of ordinary people, and yet they were able to make such a huge creature run. The spacious carriage could carry far more goods than any other carriage. Most importantly, it didn't need to rest. As long as there was enough coal, it could keep moving. This was something that no other means of transportation could do. The Hill and Michael's eyes lit up. In their hearts, they had already drawn a blueprint. I'm used to seeing high-speed trains that travel at hundreds of kilometers per hour. I'm not used to seeing these stupid guys who can't even compare to green skins. Meg sighed. He was finally going to change the world. Because the track was limited, it began to slow down before reaching its maximum speed. Finally, it stopped at the end of the track. Michael took the lead in clapping, and everyone else followed suit. Blair and the staff members who came down from the steam engine couldn't hide their excitement. After half a month of hard work in this dark cave, their efforts had not been in vain. Michael said emotionally, "I believe that it won't be long before this big guy can change the world, and you are the creators of all of this. I'm honored to be able to witness this important moment." There was another burst of cheers in the cave. Meg declined the invitation to the celebration banquet on the hill and left the construction base early. The secretary who brought him here sent him back to Amy's. Compared to the celebration banquet, it was naturally more important to make dinner for the guests. It's obviously to make money. The system's voice sounded with some disdain. Isn't it natural to bring happiness to the guests and realize the value of life at the same time? Meg said matter-of-factly. It was already 4 o'clock when he returned to the restaurant. Meg immediately immersed himself in preparing the ingredients. He was still unable to estimate how much profit the 10% shares of the steam locomotive and 20% shares of the steam engine products would bring him, but there was no possibility of cashing out in the short term. Moreover, this was like the shares of Tencent and Alibaba in their early stages. It was undoubtedly the smartest thing to do for a long time. No one knew better than him that once the steam engine era began, it would roll forward unstoppably. Of course, Meg also thought that if he directly negotiated with the Hill and gave up these 2 shares, he might be able to get enough money to buy the points needed to restore his peak strength directly from the system. This idea had been circling in his mind for a long time, but he was not confident that he would be able to get enough money from the Hill and Michael during the negotiation. The most difficult part of this system that could make one stronger by spending money was the exponential increase in the purchase price of physical strength points. Who knew how much it would charge the next time? System, calculate for me. If I were to open a restaurant like this, how many years would it take to restore my peak strength and buy the points from you? I really want to live for another 500 years. I really want to live for another 500 years. A vicissitude song echoed in Meg's mind. Meg was speechless. System, you will be beaten to death sooner or later if you continue like this. Meg rolled his eyes. It seemed that he really needed to be more careful. It doesn't matter if you don't want to borrow it for another 500 years. Elephant Eat Bar is here to help you. Host, due to your lack of enthusiasm in using Elephant Eat Bar, the system has specially launched a 1-month red packet promotion. A huge reward will be given for free. As long as you can promote Elephant Eat Bar and let them search for 568,464,257, you will receive an additional reward. The system said enthusiastically. Crazy, I am the only one using the system. I am the only user of Elephant Eat Bar. Do you think you are a flower? Promote it. Get lost. Meg rolled his eyes. This system was so fickle and did not consider the situation at all. When he was often on Weibo's trending searches, there were many people who used his name to post such advertisements. Naturally, He would not do such a thing. The sun gradually set in the west, and Amy returned to the restaurant. After dinner, it was time for the longest and busiest dinner hours. Hey, there are so many people in this restaurant. Is there something good to eat? Before I came, my father told me that there must be something good in a crowded place. I just don't know if it is expensive. If it is too expensive, my heart will ache. In the distance, a giant dragon who had shrunk to a height of 5 meters but still maintained its dragon form looked in the direction of Amy's. It hesitated for a while, but still walked in the direction of the restaurant. If it is expensive, I will eat and dash. This is what my father taught me. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com wonderful book mobile version website, .com. Chapter 954. The 5-meter-tall giant dragon walked towards Amy's, and attracted the attention of many passers-by. Giant dragons below the 8th tier were not allowed to fly in Chaos City, so most of the giant dragons would transform into their human forms. However, there were a minority of giant dragons who did not like to be in human form, but were not powerful enough. Hence, they could only follow Chaos City's rules and shrink to a height of less than 5 meters, and move around on foot. A 5-meter-tall giant dragon should be called a small giant dragon. After all, even ordinary forest trolls could reach a height of 5 meters when they reached adulthood. Hence, very few giant dragons would move around in Chaos City in such a manner. Who would not want to save face? This was a red dragon. It was not a very powerful race among the giant dragons, and it was obvious that it was a young dragon. However, even if it was a young dragon, its power was not to be underestimated. From the aura it was emitting, it was at least a 5th-tier giant dragon. Big sister Anna, look. There's a little dragon over there. It's so small. It's wobbling like a little fool. Amy, who was sitting at the restaurant's entrance with Anna on a small stool, looked at the giant dragon striding over with amazement. Yeah. It's really small compared to the giant dragons I've seen before. Anna's little face was also full of shock. She had seen giant dragons from afar before, and that huge figure had left a deep impression on her. The red dragon Chown stopped 10 meters away, and looked at the long line at the restaurant's entrance. He mumbled to himself, "It's really annoying to see so many people lining up here. Let's just go to the front. Father said that we have to be the first in everything we do, so we have to be the first in line. Giant dragons are the noblest and most powerful beings on the continent, so it's only right for us to be the first in line." With that in mind, the red dragon Chown walked to the front of the line. The ground trembled as his huge body stepped on it. Is this fellow trying to cut the line? The customers in the line looked at Chown in confusion. If that was really the case, it had been a long time since they had seen someone do that. One had to know that the people at the front of the line were the great magic casters Crassus and Julian. Who on the Norland continent dared to cut their line? Even those dragon kings on Dragon Island would feel guilty, right? Hey, little guy, are you trying to cut the queue? Sargeras walked out of the group and looked up at Chown. Let's go. Chown looked left and right before lowering his head to look at Sargeras. He said disdainfully, "Yes. Do I need to report my matters to a little demon like you?" Her father had told her that the dragons were the most powerful race on the Norland continent, and that they didn't have to listen to anyone. That won't be necessary. Sargeras shook his head. Then, he lifted the folding chair in his hand, leaped up, and smashed it on the dragon's head. Bang! With a muffled sound, the 5-meter-tall dragon flew backward and landed 100 meters away, right at the end of the line. However, I can help you return to your rightful position. Sargeras put away the folding chair and returned to the group. There was a round of applause in the line, and the guests all looked at Sargeras with approval. Boss, nice chair technique. Boss smashed a dragon with a chair. If this gets out, our Burning Legion's reputation will increase again. The members of the Burning Legion chuckled. They didn't care about the little dragon at all. I'm saving that kid. If it were Little Boss, he would be in trouble, Sargeras said with a smile as he glanced at Amy, who was sitting on the stool eagerly. That's true. The Burning Legion members nodded in agreement. It didn't matter if Little Boss could win the fight or not. What was important was that her two great magic caster masters were sitting there. This was simply against the rules. Amy sighed, and dejectedly said, Uncle Big Bald Head is so annoying. It's not easy for a little dragon to come and cause trouble, but it was smacked away just like that. I didn't even have time to do anything. Anna covered her mouth and chuckled. She had a deep impression of those few demon uncles. Although they looked scary, they were all very good demons, and not scary at all. Chown, who was smacked away more than 100 meters by the chair, landed in a pile of bushes. He stood up with a red bump on his head. He still felt dizzy, but there was a lingering fear in his heart. What a scary weapon. It actually smacked me so far away. This demon is so scary and powerful. Its ability is actually comparable to Father's. Boo-hoo. It hurts. Chown wanted to cry. This was the first time he was hit, and he was smacked away in front of so many people. His dignity as a dragon was completely trampled on. Although he was angry, he couldn't summon up the courage to get back at that demon from society with tattoos all over his body. That smack by the mysterious weapon just now had completely destroyed his confidence. This is so embarrassing. Moreover, I can't beat it. I've become a joke in front of so many people. Should I go back and get help? Chown hesitated. Those in the line were all looking at him and laughing secretly. However, he quickly made up his mind. He shook his head and said, No, I've already been beaten up. It's too much of a loss if I don't eat something. Even if it's a joke, I have to eat and dash. The restaurant opened for business very soon. The long line gradually shortened. After waiting for a long time, it was finally Chown's turn. Chown walked straight into the restaurant, but stopped when he reached the entrance. He looked at the small door that he couldn't pass through, and muttered unhappily, Why is this door so small? Do I have to break it open? Sir, if you can't shrink your body size, you can only sit in the outdoor seats outside. Also, there are no suitable seats for you, so if you want, please bring your own chair next time, Yarbemia said to Chown with a smile as she stood at the entrance of the restaurant. She didn't know if it was because she had slept with Elizabeth, but she didn't feel any fear when she saw a giant dragon now. She even vaguely felt like she was looking down on this red dragon. What kind of stupid rule is this? I'm here to eat, and they don't even let me through the door. They even want me to bring my own chair. How can a noble giant dragon like me be like them? Chown said agitatedly. Then, he turned his head and saw Sargeras sitting on a folding chair with flames all over his body. There were also lava trolls standing or sitting at the side with flames all over their bodies and smiling at him. Chown's expression froze instantly. Chapter 955. Little brother, what are we like? Keel asked with a grin. The feeling of the chair rubbing against your face is so comfortable. Do you want our boss to massage you a few more times? I think that's most likely the case. Why don't I do it this time? The people from the Burning Legion laughed and looked at Chown unkindly. To the Burning Legion, Mammis was like a holy place. This was the place where holy Rugiamos were produced. If someone dared to behave atrociously here, it was a disrespect to the Burning Legion. They didn't kill him directly because they didn't want to pollute the holy place. Mr. Mac said to be reasonable. Sargeras raised his hand to signal the people from the Burning Legion not to act rashly. He stuffed a Rugiamo into his mouth, chewed it carefully, and swallowed it. Then, he stood up with red flames burning all over his body. He asked Chown, Is it difficult to line up? Chown took a look at that folding chair. He thought of that horrible blow and his cheek that was still hurting. He shook his head quickly. Sargeras took a step forward and asked, Is it difficult to bring your own chair? No. It's not difficult. Chown took 2 steps back subconsciously and shook his head quickly. Then, is it hard for you to sit outside? Sargeras' smile became brighter and kinder. Chown's hair stood on end. He felt like he was going to cry. He took 2 more steps back and shook his head. No. It's my honor. Sargeras nodded with satisfaction. That's right. That's a good boy. If you make trouble here, the chair will take care of you easily. You have to learn to respect it. Millimeter. Chown nodded with a strong smile even though he wanted to cry. "Bill, please." Sajaraz retracted the flames on his body and gently placed the gold coin in Anna's hand before leaving with the burning legion. "Eat well," Keel reminded Chown with a smile. Phew. Chown didn't dare to take a deep breath until Sajaraz and the others were far away. "It's so scary. These guys are robbers. Isn't Chaos City the safest place? How can there be such terrifying demons?" "Sir, there are seats over there now. What would you like to order?" Yarbemia said to Chown with a smile. There weren't many customers that were too large. Usually, big guys like the Forest Trolls would go to the Forest Trolls restaurant for a meal. There, they would be able to get a suitable seat and a sufficient amount of food. Chown glanced in the direction that Sajaraz and the rest had left. After making sure that they were far away, he walked to the table with relief. He glanced at the small chair and sat down on it. It was still 3 meters tall. He looked down at the table, which was also very small. As for the menu, it was smaller than one of his claws. "What do you have here?" Chown was too lazy to look at the menu, and asked Yarbemia directly. After suffering so much, he would feel terrible if he did not have a good meal today. Yarbemia smiled and said, "Our restaurant offers many types of food, all of which are well received by our customers. For example, the eggplant with garlic sauce that we just introduced today has also been well received." "Then I'll have 5 servings of eggplant with garlic sauce," Chown said without hesitation. He loved eating fish the most. He just did not know if the fish in this restaurant was good. Eggplant with garlic sauce is 400 copper coins per serving, and rice is 50 copper coins per serving. "Are you sure you want 5 servings?" Yarbemia confirmed again. It was not too surprising that a giant dragon of this size would order 5 servings of eggplant with garlic sauce. "It doesn't matter." Chown waved his hand. He was not going to pay anyway. He would just find an excuse and leave. It was not the first time he had eaten a free meal. He used to eat a lot when he was with his father. Furthermore, money was his favorite. How could he pay someone else? "All right, please wait a moment." Yarbemia nodded. He took the orders of the few customers who had just taken their seats and went in. Chown's eggplant with garlic sauce was served not long after. "This fish smells so good." Chown's eyes lit up immediately. He lowered his head and took a deep sniff. He was intoxicated. He did not expect that there would be someone in this world who could make fish so tempting. Although he was huge, Chown used his 3 claws to grab the chopsticks very nimbly. He quickly picked up a piece of eggplant and put it into his mouth. "Ah! It's not fish." Chown was stunned. The food in his mouth was obviously not fish. The texture was completely different from fish. There was no fishy taste at all. But it's so delicious. Although it wasn't fish, the eggplant melted in his mouth. It was sweet and sour with a little spicy taste. Chown's eyes lit up immediately. He had never eaten something so delicious. It was more delicious than any other fish. Chown couldn't find any words to describe this delicacy, because none of the food he had ever eaten could compare to it. However, when he ate delicious food in the future, he would have another adjective as delicious as eggplant with garlic sauce. A mouthful of eggplant with garlic sauce, a mouthful of rice, and a small helping of eggplant with garlic sauce and a bowl of rice were quickly finished. Then, a second helping, a third helping, until all 5 servings were in his stomach. The customers at the same table as him had secretly swallowed their saliva a few times. They could not help but order an eggplant with garlic sauce as well. "This is so satisfying. I didn't expect to be able to eat such delicious food in Chaos City. Father did not lie to me." Chown put down the bowl in his hand contentedly. He looked around. Now that he was full, it was time to escape. The most important step of a dine and dash was naturally to escape. 5 servings of eggplant with garlic sauce and 10 bowls of rice. The total is 25 gold coins. However, Chown had just stood up when a crisp voice sounded beside him. Chown looked around, and finally lowered his head to see the tiny Anna at his feet. He blinked, and stuck his head down. His huge head stopped in front of Anna, and he grinned, showing his sharp teeth. He sneered, and said, "Pay? Ha, I haven't settled the score with you yet. You didn't put any fish in the dish, but called it eggplant with garlic sauce. How dare you cheat a giant dragon? Who gave you the guts? Lord Dragon is in a good mood today, so I won't be calculative with you. Otherwise, I will eat you up in one bite, and then smash this stupid restaurant. Eat, pay, or I will beat you all to death. Just then, a childish voice sounded. Amy walked to Anna's side, and looked up at Chown. She asked seriously, Stinky Dragon, are you going to pay, or be beaten to death? Chapter 956. Amy's voice wasn't loud, and there was even a hint of childishness in it, but it was clearly heard by Chown and the customers eating at the entrance of the restaurant. Is this fellow trying to dine and dash? Who gave him the courage? I don't know who gave him the courage, but I just want to send him off now. He's trying to dine and dash at Amy's, isn't he too stubborn? Doesn't he know that the Lord of Ice and the Lord of Fire are little boss's masters, and that Castellan Michael and Principal Novan are regular customers of the restaurant? Everyone looked at Chown with pity. This little red dragon who had just been taught a lesson by the Burning Legion obviously didn't learn his lesson well. Instead, he was walking further and further down the path of seeking death. A fifth-tier little dragon dares to threaten my Anna? Should I braise him or roast him? Shirley, who was clearing the table, suddenly looked out of the restaurant with a cold glint in her eyes. Barbara took a look at Chown, and quickly lost interest. She thought to herself in boredom, this fellow, I don't think he can even defeat little Amy, right? Meg, who was cooking in the restaurant, also received the system's feedback. He looked in the direction of the restaurant's entrance, and didn't show any signs of nervousness. A fellow of this level, Amy shouldn't have any problem dealing with him, right? Meg thought to himself. He still had this bit of confidence in his heart. Chown's huge eyes turned and landed on Amy. This little fellow looked even smaller than Anna, and was no different from a little white rabbit in his eyes. But this little white rabbit actually dared to threaten to kill him? Ha ha ha. This is the funniest joke I've ever heard in my life. Chown raised his head and laughed maniacally. Then, he suddenly lowered his head to look at Amy, and grinned, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth. He said coldly, little fellow, if you don't scram now, this Lord Dragon will eat both of you up. Amy, be careful. A hint of fear appeared on Anna's face, and she spread her arms in front of Amy to protect her. The commotion outside the restaurant attracted the attention of the customers in the restaurant. Although they found it hard to believe that someone would dare to cause trouble at Mammoth, a few of the customers near the entrance and the floor-to-ceiling windows stood up when they saw this scene. Little Boss was everyone's favorite. This little dragon actually dared to bare its teeth at her. This behavior was much worse than cutting the queue. Moreover, the little elf cashier was also very cute. Moreover, she was also very kind and polite. Just looking at these two little cuties made people have the urge to hug them, and this guy actually dared to threaten them. Feeling the gazes on him, Chown's expression became even more smug, and he thought gleefully, haha, now you know how powerful I am, right? It's just a restaurant opened by a human. I'm already giving you face by coming here to eat. You actually want to charge me? You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If we weren't in Chaos City, I would really want to eat these two little fellows. They should taste better than the freshest rabbit, right? Chown thought greedily as he glanced at Amy and Anna. However, his father had warned him before he came here that he must not kill anyone in Chaos City. Hence, he could only think of it regretfully in his heart as he turned to leave. He was very satisfied with the free meal today, so he planned to bring his father and mother to have another meal tomorrow. Anyway, he didn't have to pay. Who would dare to stop him? No one would dare to stop a powerful giant dragon. Very good, Stinky Dragon. You've made a different choice. Just then, Amy's voice sounded again. Johnson, who had just taken a few steps, stopped in his tracks. There was a murderous glint in his red eyes. He slowly turned to look at Amy, and coldly said, "Don't challenge a giant dragon's patience and dignity. Otherwise, you will die a horrible death. Don't doubt Amy's words. Otherwise, you will die a horrible death too." A magic caster's staff that was taller than a grown man appeared in Amy's hand, and she stood in front of Anna. She looked at Johnson with a serious expression, and said, Pay up for your meal, or I'll beat you to death. Chown sneered disdainfully. Hee, little imp. I'll stand here and let you hit me. I'm afraid you can't even hit my knees even if you jump up. Go and get your father here. Let him kowtow to me and admit his mistake. Then, I'll let this matter go. Otherwise, I won't let you off today. This fellow. He's really annoying. The customers eating outside the restaurant looked at Chown indignantly. Some of them had already reached for their weapons. As regular customers of Amy's, it was only right for them to draw their weapons and help. When the tiny Amy and the red dragon stood side by side, they looked like a harmless little rabbit challenging an elephant. Many of the customers had the urge to draw their swords and help. Some of the girls looked worried. Chown, who was in his dragon form, looked a little fierce. It would be terrible if he accidentally hurt Amy and Anna. What a delightful choice. Amy reached out her little hand to Chown. Extreme coldness descended instantly. The smile on Chown's face froze. There was a trace of fear in his eyes. The air seemed to be frozen at this moment. Other than his thoughts, his body could not move at all. Is this the domain of a high-level magic caster? Is there a powerful magic caster in this restaurant? Chown was shocked. He wanted to struggle, but he could not move at all. I'm a noble red dragon. Even if there really is a high-level magic caster, would he dare to attack me? Isn't he afraid of my father's anger? However, Chown quickly regained his composure and thought confidently. Then, he saw a magic caster's staff coming closer and closer. His eyes widened. Since you've asked so sincerely, I'll be merciful and fulfill your wish. Go. Stinky dragon. Amy's voice sounded. She leaped high and waved her magic wand at the 5-meter-tall Chown. Bam! With a muffled sound, the 5-meter-tall red dragon was hit on the head by Amy's magic wand. It flew into the sky as if it was hit by a heavy hammer. After landing lightly on the ground, Amy extended her right hand towards the sky. A huge fireball appeared and chased after the dragon that was still flying into the sky. Boom! The fireball caught up with the red dragon and exploded in the air. The exploding fireball was even more dazzling than fireworks. Many people raised their heads to look at this scene, and they felt their moods brighten as well. Little Boss is so scary. Then, all eyes fell on REMI, and a strong thought arose in everyone's mind. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com wonderful book mobile version website, .com. Chapter 957. Smack. The charred red dragon fell from the sky and landed in a bush. Its body was black and smoking, and there was a burnt smell in the air. All of the guests were stunned as they looked at the harmless Amy and the smoking giant dragon on the ground not far away. They still couldn't believe that Amy was the one who had just unleashed such an elegant attack that was both violent and magical at the same time. The scene is extremely pleasing. She's indeed the disciple of the Lord of Ice and the Lord of Fire. Little Boss is awesome. She's more than awesome. She's invincible. Little Boss has become a dragon-slaying hero at such a young age. She's going to catch up to Master Alex. The combination of melee magic and long-range magic was perfect at this moment. I think it won't be long before the magic world will be shaken up by this completely disruptive magic caster. The customers who were about to attack sat back down. It seemed like there was no room for them to do anything. Little Boss could handle it herself. Everyone looked at Amy differently. If it was said that Amy being taken in as a disciple by Julian and Crassus proved her talent, then the ability to kill a 5th-tier red dragon in an instant proved that the two legendary magic casters were not wrong. Moreover, compared to the rumors, this little magic caster who had only learned magic for less than a year had even greater talent in magic and combat. This little girl's talent in magic is so strong. She's much stronger than the last time. She's been promoted consecutively in just a few months. Even Princess Irina didn't reach this level back then. Shirley looked at Amy in surprise. She knew better about Irina's terrifying talent back then. But in front of Amy, even Irina paled in comparison. Amy is awesome. She successfully defeated the bad guy again. Yabemia also revealed a joyful smile. After all, the opponent was a red dragon, although it was only a young one. She knows how to hold back. She's grown up a lot. The corners of Meg's mouth curled up slightly. He was not too surprised by the outcome of the battle, but when he heard everyone's praise for Amy, he could not help but feel happy. Anna stared at the smoking dragon with her mouth slightly agape. She looked at Amy in awe and exclaimed, "It's amazing. Let's go collect the money now." "How much should we collect, Miss Anna?" Amy turned around and looked at Anna with a cute smile, as if what had just happened had nothing to do with her. "But..." Anna looked at the charred crimson dragon, and asked hesitantly, "Is he dead?" Amy shook her head and said with a smile, "No, I purposely left him alive to pay for it. After he pays, we'll kill him." The customers all looked at him. Little Boss was indeed brave and resourceful. Although his words sounded a little scary, they felt that it was inexplicably cute. After all, what the red dragon said just now was several times worse than what Little Boss said, so no one pitied him at all. "If we kill him, it's not very good, right?" Anna looked at Chown with pity. The customers' expressions softened a little. It seemed that this little elf was more soft-hearted. She actually pitied the crimson dragon after being threatened like that. "Why don't we grill him on the grill? When both sides are golden brown, sprinkle some cumin powder. That way, they'll know the price of not paying for their meals in the future," Anna continued. "Ha!" The customers all stared at the smiling Anna. They did not expect her to be such a ruthless person. That's a good idea. I haven't eaten grilled dragon before. I wonder if it's delicious." Amy's eyes lit up, and she became eager to try it. This cashier duo is too scary. They're simply two little devils among angels. The customers did not know whether to laugh or cry as they looked at Amy and Anna. They suddenly missed Miss Aisha. "I won't dine and dash anymore. I'll give you all my money. I won't dare to do it again." Chown, who was lying half dead on the ground, suddenly jumped up and spat out a treasure chest with a clang. Then, he turned and ran away, his tail still emitting sparks, leaving a trail of dust behind. Hey! The cooked dragon actually flew away. Amy was stunned for a moment. When she saw that the crimson dragon had already disappeared, she helplessly put away the magic caster's staff in her hand and turned to look at the treasure chest that was taller than her. There were a few beautiful sapphires embedded in it. "If he's using this box to pay the bill, shouldn't we give him the change?" Anna also walked up and sized up the huge sapphires embedded in the chest. The dazzling luster looked quite expensive. One of the customers squinted at the sapphires, and his eyes lit up immediately. He said in surprise, "The one in the middle of the chest is not a sapphires. It should be a blue diamond from Vic Mountain. This kind of diamond is extremely rare. In the history of the goblins' mining, less than 1,000 of them have been mined, and those of this size and purity are less than 100. Just this blue diamond alone is worth at least 100,000 gold coins." As soon as he said that, there was a series of gasps. 100,000 gold coins was a huge sum of money. Even if most of the people present were petty bourgeois, not many of them could own a blue diamond worth 100,000 gold coins. A guy with a blue diamond worth 100,000 gold coins actually dared to dine and dash. In the end, he lost the blue diamond. How stupid. The customers all thought in their hearts, and at the same time, cast envious gazes at Amy and Anna. These two little fellows had received a huge sum of money. "Is it an empty chest?" Amy muttered curiously, and then pushed open the chest lid. The dazzling light made the dark night become bright, and also blinded the eyes of the people who were looking over. That chest was full of gems and treasures. The dragon coin was only the most inconspicuous item among them, and the reflection of the light was eye-catching. "Wow! Oh my God! Is this the collection of a giant dragon? He obviously has so many treasures, but he insisted on dining and dashing, and even daring to eat from Amy's. Why bother? The red dragon failed to dine and dash, and Mr. Mac is the biggest winner." The shiny treasures in the chest caused a commotion among the customers. Just the blue diamond on the chest lid alone was worth 100,000 gold coins. The value of this chest full of treasures was beyond most people's imagination. That's more like it." Amy nodded in satisfaction, and then casually closed the chest lid, and said matter-of-factly, "This is the fine." Please remember the domain name of this book, .com wonderful book mobile version website, .com. Chapter 958. You Have to Avenge Me. Page 11, gulp. Many people swallowed their saliva at the same time. They were scared. No one dared to dine and dash at Mammis anymore. Not only would they be blacklisted, they would also have to pay a huge fine. The amount of fine was shocking. However, not many people felt that Amy should not have taken the money. The giant dragon had thrown it out himself, and he was indeed in the wrong. As for whether there would be any trouble after taking it, if they weren't worried about Julian and Crassus causing trouble for them, they could come and cause trouble for Little Boss. Then I'll move the fine inside. Yarbemia smiled as she walked out. She reached out and picked up the treasure chest. It was rather heavy, but fortunately, she was very strong. Carrying the treasure chest was no problem at all. Amy followed him through the door and trotted to the kitchen door. She poked her head out and looked at Meg. Father, I've seized a treasure chest. Where should I put it? Meg looked at the treasure chest in Yarbemia's arms with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Although he had heard the uproar among the customers, he did not expect Amy to have obtained such a rich treasure. He thought for a moment and said, "Put it under the counter first." "Okay." Yarbemia nodded and placed the chest under the counter. "System, check the value of the treasures inside this treasure chest," Meg said inwardly. After the system's conversion, the total value of all the gems, rare metals, dragon coins, and other items in this treasure chest is 315 million copper coins. This is based on the current market value. As some of the rare metals and gems only appear in auctions, the total value will fluctuate to a certain extent, the system quickly replied. Meg raised an eyebrow. He didn't expect that Amy would be able to achieve 3 small goals just by casually teaching a meal to a dine and dash dragon. It was even more than what he had earned in the past few months. Of course, what surprised him even more was that such a huge amount of treasure actually appeared in the hands of a 5th-grade dragon. It was no secret that dragons loved treasures. With the dragon's powerful strength and long lifespan, the treasures they could collect in their lifetime would be a huge amount. However, those were powerful giant dragons that had lived for at least hundreds of years. It was a little unreasonable for such a huge amount of treasure to appear in the hands of a young dragon. Apart from the fact that the dragon had gotten lucky and obtained a large amount of treasure, the only other possibility was that it was a brat from a rich family. Judging from his previous behavior, the second possibility was obviously more likely. This was a huge sum of money that could be obtained very easily, but it was also a huge sum of money that could not be kept as one's own. "Father, isn't Amy awesome?" Amy looked at Meg expectantly, her little face saying, "Quick, praise me." Meg looked at Amy and nodded dotingly. Yes, Amy maintained order in the restaurant and helped Anna complete the cashier's work. Very good. Anna completed the cashier's work excellently. Very good, too. Then Meg looked at Anna and praised her again. Amy and Anna revealed happy smiles on their faces. The 2 little fellows had no idea about the value of the treasures in the heavy box, so after receiving Meg's praise, they continued to immerse themselves in their work as cashiers. After the customers in the restaurant sighed with emotion, they did not continue to pay too much attention to the private room's performance. However, with the lesson of the past, the customers became especially cooperative with Anna's cashier's work. After the dinner service ended, Yarbemia, Barbara, and Phyllis finished their work and left first. After Shirley cleaned up the restaurant, she also prepared to leave with Anna. When she reached the door, she stopped, looked at Meg, and said, "What do you plan to do with that box of gems? If I'm not wrong, that little dragon should have some status in the Red Dragon tribe. Let's leave it for a few days first. If no one comes to claim it, then we'll consider it a fine. If someone comes to claim it, then we'll have to reason with them," Mag said to Shirley with a smile. Shirley thought for a while, and a smile also appeared on her face. Giant dragons never like to reason with people. However, the Red Dragon tribe is not a powerful dragon tribe. There's only one 10th-tier giant dragon. If Amy's teacher is here, he naturally won't be able to reason with you. That's good. Meg nodded, and his smile became even brighter. In this world, most of the time, the bigger fist was the law. Although it was a little domineering, it was also very interesting sometimes. Shirley left with Anna. Meg closed and locked the door, and then lowered the blinds. Only then did he carry the heavy treasure box out from under the counter. Amy came over with Ugly Duckling in her arms, and asked curiously, "Father, what are you doing? I haven't touched so much money in a long time." "I want to satisfy my craving," Meg said with a smile. Then, he opened the lid of the treasure box. The gems reflected the light, and refracted a gorgeous light. The whole restaurant was filled with the candlelight of treasures. 10 seconds later, Meg closed the lid with a dull expression. "Such a tacky thing. I can't accept it in a different world." Meg shook his head. He had seen too many famous paintings and jewelry that were worth hundreds of millions in his previous life. One of his mother's hobbies was collecting jewelry. Any one of the jewelry boxes was worth more than this whole box. So, when he saw this box full of treasures, it was very difficult for him to feel anything. The only thing that moved him a little was how many strength points he could exchange from the system with this unexpected windfall. "System, if I use all the money in this box to exchange for strength points, how many points can I get?" Meg asked directly in his mind. The system fell into a long silence. In the end, it said quietly, "This money is not the normal income of the host from running the restaurant. It cannot be chosen in the system's exchange terms. The system will have to do a comprehensive risk assessment before it can reply to this question. The assessment time is estimated to be 3 days. Then you can do the assessment." Meg stuffed the treasure box into the safe in the cabinet. This was one of the improvements made by the system after upgrading the restaurant. A spacious safe was added to the counter to store the restaurant's high daily turnover. Then, he brought Amy upstairs to wash up and sleep. "Father, I was almost beaten to death, and the treasure box you gave me was also stolen. I don't have anything left. You have to avenge me." On Red Dragon Island, in an empty cave, a rather pitiful voice sounded. Bookhouse reading website. Chapter 959. My son. 2 red dragons with a wingspan of dozens of meters descended from the cave. Their red eyes were filled with fury as they looked at the charred Chown. The red dragon, Chown, with a wingspan of over 20 meters, looked as though he had just rolled through a fireball. His entire body was charred black, and his flesh was lacerated. He was in a terrible state, and his aura was very weak. "Chown, tell mother. Who did this? How dare they do this to you?" The female dragon used her wings to brush the wounds on Chown's body gently. Her fury almost materialized, and red flames started to burn on her body. The male dragon at the side also angrily said, "How dare someone do this to my son? Tell father who that fellow is. I will tear him into pieces, and get back the treasure chest for you." The angry roar reverberated in the empty cave, and even the mountain rocks were trembling slightly. It's a 4 or 5-year-old half-elf," Chown said angrily. The 2 red dragons' expressions froze instantly. They felt that they had heard wrongly. "Chown, who did you say beat you up?" the red dragon Chown asked in a deep voice. Chown looked at Chown, and felt a little ashamed when he thought about how he was beaten up by a 4 or 5-year-old half-elf. However, when he thought about how he had just gotten the treasure chest from his father, and lost it just like that, he was very indignant. He had to make those 2 brats pay the price to get rid of the anger in his heart. He replied, in Chaos City, at a restaurant called Mammoth. "I was beaten up by a 4 or 5-year-old half-elf." The cave became quiet all of a sudden. "You're saying that you, a noble red dragon who had just had your coming-of-age ceremony, was beaten up by a 4-year-old half-elf? And your treasure chest was stolen?" Anger was building up in Chown's eyes. "Father, Fear appeared in Chown's eyes, and he moved closer to the female dragon instinctively. "Enough. Johnson, if you have the ability, go and attack that half-elf bastard who hurt my son. That little bastard must have done something bad. Otherwise, with my son's intelligence and strength, how could he have been hurt by her?" The female dragon roared as she stood in front of Chown. Yes, it wasn't just a half-elf, there was also a group of lava trolls. They were the ones who beat me up. There were too many of them. Otherwise, I would have defeated all of them. Chown quickly nodded. Johnson was frightened by the she-dragon's roar. He glanced at Chown and nodded. All right, I will definitely not let this matter rest. I want to see how a group of lava demons dare to disrespect the Red Dragon tribe. They must pay the price. I'll go with you tomorrow. I'm going to swallow that little bastard alive to avenge my son, the mother dragon said through gritted teeth. The story of Amy burning the giant dragon quickly became a topic of conversation among the customers in the queue. The cute little Amy smacked the 5-meter-tall giant dragon away with her magic staff, and then chased after it with a fireball. This scene was very shocking in itself. Actually, you guys have overlooked a very important point. Before the giant dragon was sent flying, Little Boss had cast a spell on it. It was a temporary confinement spell. That's why the giant dragon didn't have time to react, a Grey Temple mage said with a smile. Oh, what kind of confinement spell was that? Everyone looked at that mage curiously. It was not easy to see a mage from the Grey Temple usually, but they were often seen in the queue outside Amy's. If I'm not wrong, it might be the Field of Extreme Frost. Although it only lasted for a very short time, I'm sure it was not an ordinary frost spell, that mage said with a smile. Isn't the Field of Extreme Frost something that only advanced mags can use? Is Little Boss already an advanced mage? A young man exclaimed, causing quite a commotion. A 4-year-old advanced mage? This world is too crazy, isn't it? I don't think so. Judging from the power of the fireball, Little Boss should still be at the 5th tier. That Field of Extreme Frost that lasted for a very short time is most likely due to Little Boss's amazing talent. She comprehended it in advance. The mage from the Grey Temple shook his head. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. If she was a 5th-tier mage, although it would be equally shocking, at least it would be slightly easier to accept. But no matter what, the youngest dragon-slaying warrior was almost born yesterday. Compared to Sir Alex, it seems to be much earlier, right? Yes, Sir Alex is back, and Little Boss is like a rising star. I feel that the world will become more and more interesting because of these two people. I just don't know what will happen if Sir Alex meets Little Boss in the future. A strongest knight against a mage who is good at both close combat and long-range attacks. Just thinking about it makes my blood boil. Some of the customers were discussing fervently. Meg, who was pushing the bicycle out to send Amy to school, heard the conversation of the customers, and a smile appeared on his face. If they meet, there's probably no more harmonious scene than this, right? Father, is this Sir Alex that they're talking about, a very powerful person? I seem to hear a lot of people talking about him every day. Sitting on the back seat of the bicycle, Amy asked curiously. Yes, he's a very powerful person. Meg nodded with a smile. Probably there's no other person in the world who's as powerful as Alex, right? Amy's eyes lit up, and she nodded her little head. If even Father says so, then he must be someone as powerful as Father. When Amy grows up, I'll become someone like him. Okay, Father will accompany Meg. Meg nodded with a smile. This little girl's mouth was really sweet. When he sent Amy to school, many students stared at Meg, and some of them whispered, "Look, he's the uncle who made the kebabs, the invincible king of wind and fire wheels." Amy's father. Although Meg was a little speechless about the strange prefix used by himself and Amy, it seemed that the kebabs on the day of the parent-teacher conference had indeed left a deep impression on the students. On the way back to the restaurant, Meg saw the Catering Association's countdown bulletin board in the square. Until the release of the new Aiden Square food rankings, 10 days. I wonder if that mysterious food taster has come to eat at the restaurant, Meg muttered to himself, and continued to ride toward the restaurant. At noon, there were still a few minutes before Amy's opened for business, and there was a long line of hundreds of people at the door. "You bastard who beat up my son, come out and die." A furious voice exploded like thunder, accompanied by the roar of a dragon. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com wonderful book mobile version website, .com. Chapter 960. The angry roar exploded in the ears of the customers in the queue like a sudden clap of thunder, accompanied by a terrifying pressure. The faces of the ordinary people among the customers turned pale in an instant, and fear appeared on their faces. The faces of the powerful customers also changed slightly. Such a powerful pressure could only be emitted by an 8th-tier giant dragon. Such power was indeed terrifying. Could it be that the giant dragon that was beaten up by Little Boss yesterday went home to look for his father? What a terrifying giant dragon pressure! A customer exclaimed softly. In the sky, 2 red dragons with a wingspan of dozens of meters brought a smaller red dragon with them as they swooped down towards Amy's. The hurricane they created bent the trees at the entrance, and some of the weaker customers were also blown back. Ha ha ha, you dared to laugh at me yesterday. Are you scared now? You damned reptiles. Chown looked down at the customers who were staggering back, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. Chown, you have to know that as a noble giant dragon, only powerful strength can make everyone look up to you, just like your father. Johnson was also in high spirits as he laughed maniacally. He flapped his wings, and the power of the hurricane doubled again. Crassus and Julian, who were at the front of the queue, frowned at the same time. Julian's finger moved. Michael said that he hopes we don't kill people casually, Crassus said calmly. Since when did you listen to others? Julian retracted his finger, and looked at Crassus in surprise. Crassus smiled, and said, I'm very satisfied with what Novan and Michael have done recently. I still want to stay here and teach Amy for a few more years, so I plan to follow the rules and not kill people casually. I've always killed people casually. Julian raised his finger, and the hurricane and pressure created by the giant dragon's dive instantly subsided. However, he did not continue to attack. You can kill them whenever you want. The customers in the queue only calmed down slightly after the hurricane and pressure disappeared. They looked at Julian and Crassus, who were standing at the front of the queue, and felt relieved. When they looked at the 3 red dragons again, their eyes were filled with pity. Weren't they rushing to their deaths? As for the little red dragon, although it had been treated, there were still burn marks on its body. It was obvious how badly it was beaten up yesterday. Mond looked at Chown, and lamented, Boss, you were right. You went easy on them. Even if they didn't die, they would lose a layer of their skin in the hands of Little Boss. It's one thing to shed a layer of skin, but he even brought 2 old people to their deaths. This family really wants to die together. Keel clicked his tongue, taking pleasure in the misfortune of others. Brothers of brothers. By father. Lava demons. Johnson looked at the 6 lava demons standing together, and was slightly shocked. Although the dragons had always looked down on demons, the lava demons used to be one of the top 10 demon races, and their strength was not to be underestimated. However, he soon realized that there was only one 8th-tier lava demon among these lava demons, and the rest were all 5th-tier and 5th-tier demons. On the other hand, there were 2 8th-tier red dragons on their side. Their strength completely suppressed the other party, and they were instantly emboldened. They spread their wings, and hovered 20 meters above the ground. The 3 giant dragons covered the sky, and almost blocked all the sunlight. All the demons are here. Where is that half-elf bastard? Hurry up and come out to die. Johnson's gaze stopped on Sajara's for a while before he turned to Amy's, and shouted in a deep voice. Ding! The restaurant's door was pushed open, and Amy jumped out with a roast duck leg in her hand. She chewed on it as she looked at the 3 giant dragons in the sky excitedly, and said, Stinky dragon, are you here to give me money again? Don't be in such a hurry. Let me eat a duck leg first. I'll come and beat you to death after I'm done. Johnson, the customers, Meg and the others who followed her out, Crassus looked at Amy with a gratified expression. This fearless personality is similar to mine when I was young. I think it's just the way she eats. Julian pursed his lips, and looked at Amy with gratification. This personality is obviously like mine. Fearless. Mag looked up at the 3 giant dragons in the sky. He directly ignored the smaller one. The 2 larger ones were 8th-tier giant dragons, and they were quite powerful. At the very least, he wouldn't be able to defeat them now. That windfall from yesterday was indeed not easy to obtain. Of course, he was not worried at all. After all, the 2 legendary magic casters were arguing about who Amy's personality was like. Could the 2 8th-tier red dragons step on them and do anything to Amy? Mother! She was the one who burned me with the fireball. Chown's voice suddenly became shrill, and he even subconsciously climbed a few meters up. He could not help but tremble when he thought of the fireball that chased after him yesterday. That small body actually contained such terrifying power and powerful magic. If he had not experienced it himself, he would never have believed that there was such a thing. Of course, he was not worried at all now. With his father and mother around, how could that little brat be more powerful than 2 8th-tier giant dragons? Bullshit. You were as timid as a mouse when you were young. Now that you're 20, you don't even dare to kill a chicken. How dare you say you're fearless? Don't you have any shame? Crassus pursed his lips with a mocking expression. You dare to mock me? When you were in your 20s, who was the one who had a crush on Miss Culina but did not have the guts to confess? In the end, Johannes beat you to it. Julian asked with a mocking expression. That fellow was killed by me with a blow of my staff. Crassus gritted his teeth. But Miss Culina still did not choose you. Julian's smile became more mocking. A terrifying aura began to emanate from the two of them. The customers standing in the front row began to step back consciously, and then quietly covered their ears. Although the embarrassing stories of the big bosses were nice to hear, their lives were more important. Some secrets could be fatal if one listened to too much. The red female dragon stared at Amy with her scarlet eyes, and roared, "Little bastard, how dare you hurt my precious son like that? I'm going to swallow you alive today." As soon as she finished speaking, she let out an ear-piercing dragon roar, and opened her bloody mouth as she swooped down toward Amy, who was standing at the entrance of the restaurant. Amy was still holding half a drumstick in her hand as she stared blankly at the giant dragon swooping down. It seemed like it was not enough to fill the gaps between its teeth. Chown's face was filled with excitement, and the blood in his body seemed to be boiling. The customers all stepped aside, afraid that they would be accidentally hurt by the giant dragon. Sargeras looked at Crassus and Julian, who were standing in front of Amy. He hesitated for a while, and did not choose to attack. "Go to hell," the female dragon roared, and bit toward Amy. "Noisy. You're affecting our quarrel." Julian raised his magic caster's staff, and casually knocked on the red dragon's head. Chapter 961. Boom. The crimson dragon that was swooping down rapidly was hit in the head by the seemingly light magic caster's staff, but it suddenly plummeted and crashed into the ground as if it had been hit by a ton of force. The ground shook, and a 1-meter-deep pit appeared. That red dragon with a wingspan of dozens of meters twitched twice and stopped moving. "Mother!" Chown exclaimed as he looked at the motionless mother dragon in disbelief. His powerful mother, an 8th-tier giant dragon, was killed by that old man with a single strike. "Wife!" Xiao Sen also let out a furious roar, and his eyes instantly turned blood red. His anger made him lose his mind. He opened his bloody mouth, and a ball of fiery red magma condensed in his throat. The boiling hot aura even caused the surrounding air to turn illusory. "Shut up. If I lose this argument, you'll die." Julian turned back and glanced at Johnson. Kai, the magma fireball that condensed in Johnson's mouth was extinguished instantly, and a layer of frost appeared around his huge body. Then, he fell straight from the sky and sank deep into the soil with a thud. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. In the blink of an eye, the two menacing 8th-tier giant dragons were buried in the soil just like that. The situation changed so quickly that the onlookers could not wrap their heads around it. Especially the two great magic casters who attacked so casually. They were still arguing about who Little Boss's personality resembled, as though what had just happened had nothing to do with them. This is too strong. The Lord of Ice and the Lord of Fire are indeed worthy of their reputation. A legend is a legend. Your grandpa is your grandpa. The guests gradually became restless as they exclaimed incessantly, "Father!" Chown looked at Johnson, who was sealed in ice, and was completely stunned. His father, who was incomparably powerful in his heart, was sealed in ice so easily. He did not even see how the other party attacked. It was as though he had sealed a fly casually. That kind of power made him feel despair. A 10th-tier great magic caster. A word jumped into his mind. Chown felt as though he had fallen into an ice cave as he looked at the two old men standing at the entrance of the restaurant. "Oh." Stinky dragon, I've finished my duck leg. Now, let's have a duel. Right at this moment, Amy threw the duck leg bone in her hand into the bin at the side. She licked her lips and looked at Chown eagerly as she took out her magic caster's staff. Chown was shocked as though he had heard the devil's call. He did not even care about his parents, who were still on the ground, and turned to escape. You came to me. It's too late to run now, Amy said with a smile. A pair of wind-fire wheels appeared under her feet, and her body shot up instantly. In a flash, she appeared above Chown's head. She held her magic caster's staff with both hands and smashed it down forcefully. Bam! With a muffled sound, the giant dragon with a wingspan of more than 20 meters fell from the sky like a bird whose wings had been broken. It crashed into the ground with a loud bang. It struggled for a while before fainting. The 3 dragons that had come aggressively to denounce Lin Li were completely defeated before they could even do anything. See, the entrance of the restaurant was silent. Such a situation did not happen often in Chaos City. 2 8th-tier giant dragons and 1 5th-tier giant dragon's fate was unknown. Although this matter started because the giant dragons came to pick a fight, and the ones who attacked were the 2 10th-tier great magic casters, Crassus and Julian, it was still unknown how the Grey Temple would deal with it. Isn't it better to be reasonable? Fighting with 2 great magic casters is just asking for death. In the restaurant, Shirley pursed her lips as she looked at the 2 giant dragons. Amy is really impressive. Anna leaned against the window and looked at Amy with admiration. Meg shrugged at this scene that was not too unexpected. Then, he coughed softly and loudly said to the customers who were at a loss, "The restaurant is open for business. Please come in." "Oh, right. Let's eat." The customers suddenly remembered why they were queuing here, and followed into the restaurant. Compared to delicious food, these giant dragons were not worth wasting their time on. After such a huge commotion, the people from the Grey Temple naturally arrived very quickly. However, Meg did not have to explain anything. The magic caster in the line went forward to explain the cause and effect of the incident to his colleagues, and the other customers testified unanimously. The 3 giant dragons who came to pick a fight were directly dragged away. Soon, workers from the Blessing restaurant arrived. They repaired the damaged ground and straightened the fallen trees. The entrance of Mammy restaurant was restored to its original state, as if nothing had happened. However, how could they pretend that nothing had happened after such a huge commotion? The news seemed to have grown wings and quickly spread throughout the Aiden Square. Have you heard? Just now, 3 8th-tier giant dragons tried to dine and dash at Amy's, and were killed. Really? Even 8th-tier giant dragons were killed? Is that restaurant owner so cruel? Don't you know who is behind him? The Lord of Ice Julian and the Lord of Fire Crassus attacked at the same time. That scene was simply a massacre. I'm scared. Then I'd better not eat there in the future. I feel that my life is in danger. As long as you follow the rules, Mr. Mac and Little Boss are actually very nice. Just remember to pay after eating. People were discussing, and this incident spread to more people's ears. Soon, everyone in the Aiden Square knew one thing: one could not dine and dash at Amy's. Damn it. Hey! Why did I come to Amy's again? There are still more than 100 restaurants to eat at. It doesn't seem good to eat at the same restaurant every day. Derek stood in front of Amy's with a conflicted expression on his face. After hesitating for a while, he nodded and muttered to himself, "Just 1 bowl of rice shouldn't be a problem, right? Then, I'll try other restaurants." Then, he walked into the restaurant. Half an hour later, Derek walked out of the restaurant and burped. He looked back at Amy's signboard with melancholy, and sighed. "Why can't I control my mouth? I said I would only eat 1 bowl, but I still couldn't help but eat 2 bowls. I even ordered an extra helping of tofu pudding. Forget it. I'll eat at other restaurants tonight." Derek shook his head and turned to leave. "System, have you done the conversion? It's such a simple arithmetic problem. Did you take so long to solve it?" Meg asked in his mind as he sat on the high stool behind the counter after the lunch service ended. No pop-up window. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.